hey folks. So for the month of June, the numbers are hard for the FBI statistics or whatever. We had 0 Part 1 crimes, and then we had 10 total reports taken in the Acton area. 2 grand theft, 2 thefts from vehicles, and 6 petty thefts. And I want to say at least 4 of those are from the Arco. We've been having a lot of guys coming in that don't live in the area and taking energy drinks and then taking off, and they're like 30 seconds away from the freeway, and they're gone before the other day. Michael's the owner. I don't know if you guys have got a chance to meet him yet. It's him and his 3 brothers and his mom run the place. Good people. But they called. I was there within a minute and 30 seconds out of the community center, and the dude was like, long gone. I was like, I'm not gonna get much faster than that.
Yeah.
So, and then the last one was 2 auto thefts, like actual vehicles stolen. So that's it. Anything?
The folks we met with this afternoon, Shelter Partners, we'd like to speak with you if that's okay. I told them I'd send them your contact information tomorrow because they were wondering who was really kind of boots on the ground in this area for people who are living homeless, like in RVs, houseboats, whatever.
That's still questionable. That is floating capability. I don't think it's seaworthy.
Okay, houseboat wannabes. So,
Vehicles
that's
formerly
okay.
known as a houseboat.
Is there a houseboat around here?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, you missed it
Yeah,
that meeting.
yeah,
He had a picture. I might not. They
They want
like
it,
to send
yes,
it.
by all means. It's worth seeing.
I have their cards, which we got today, but if maybe we could get a copy for our record. Maybe Jim could do that for us.
Yeah.
These are the 2 people we met with today.
How many copies do you want?
Does everybody want one, Jenny? You
I
got
have
it?
a
Why don't you do your,
Yeah.
I'll find it and then I'll go make a copy. Or my report is not how many copies we want.
Everybody would probably like one.
Did you bring any of that mint tea lemonade?
Oh man, I went to bring some because I knew it was wonderful here, but by the time I got out the door, it was all gone.
Oh, gosh.
My cup must have had a hole in it.
Yeah. Look.
at the top?
For those of you who are wondering, she was here for the cooking demo we had last weekend.
That was awesome.
Very cool.
I'll let you. It was delicious. I really enjoyed it.
I wasn't here.
You on stream? You heard about
You
it?
missed it.
I'll have them. I'm gonna have them back. I
You're
got
gonna
iron
grill
out
out
dates.
there then, right? You're gonna put a grill?
Oh, if I could get that approved. That makes summers wonderful. Other library things. If you didn't already guess, we will be closed this Thursday, 4th of July. Everyone's got things to do, so we'll be closed. Summer reading program still going on, going strong. If you haven't signed up, stop in at the library before we close, or come by another day, sign up, get your all your prizes. That goes down through August 3rd. Next thing I'm gonna bring up, this is probably I'll probably mention again closer to the beginning of the school year too, just to make sure everyone knows. But starting today, we have a new online tutoring vendor. We used to use tutor.com for anyone to go online and get help with homework or papers or whatever they're working on. Starting today, the new vendor is called Brain Fuse.
Brain what?
Brain Fuse. Yeah.
S-E?
Perfect. All one word. Spell check later. But yeah, I sat in on a webinar about it. Pretty all-encompassing. There's even things for non-students, for resume assistants and things like that. So really kind of a cool new vendor we've got there. Cool.
I'm just curious, how do we access that?
Through our website, if you go to online library or digital library, it should be there under, there should be like a homework section or a learning section. It should be right there.
Thank you.
And then just some upcoming programs we've got coming. What is this? July 11th at noon, I've got Richard Wade coming. He's coming with his Dinosaur Program. Talks about how dinosaurs live, what happened to them. He has like a 5-foot-tall replica of dinosaur bone he brings with him. It's really it's a great thing, so come on in for that. We also have a science program, Fire and Ice. These guys come and they do all kinds of experiments with paradise, hopefully don't burn the library down. That'll be July 30th at 4 p.m. And then I've got an adult painting with watercolors program. It's gonna be on July 20th at 1. She's here, it's kind of an orientation on how to paint with watercolors. Should be fun. I'm sorry?
I'd love to come to that. I love.
Oh, I think you might have to report on it then.
Pardon?
You might have to report on it then. Gives you an excuse to come.
Just get away.
I'll save you a seat. I'll save you a seat.
You have to sign up in advance?
No. But I can save you one anyway.
It's good to know people in high
It
places.
certainly is.
I'm not sure I'm a high place, but I'm here.
We think you're on high place.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Unless there's any other questions or concerns or anything, that's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Wow, blazing. Thousand Trails CUP.
Let me pull that up. Okay, so, sorry, I have a lot of files here, and I didn't get that one opened. Down here. All right, so I was down at the Department of Regional Planning a week and a half ago on that Thursday, last Thursday, to look at some files, and I talked to Ramon Cordova, who is the assigned planner for Thousand Trails. And Thousand Trails is, he told me that Thousand Trails was close to being ready for their hearing on their CUP. And he said one thing that he noticed that's missing in the files is a letter from the Acton Town Council. And I said to him, it's because they've never presented their project. We've asked them to, tell us what their plans are. The last time the town council saw them was in 2008, when they presented that they were going to, 2007? No, it was 2008. They were going to, instead of going forward with the RV park, they were going to put in several hundred units of low-income leased housing, affordable housing lease programs in that area. And you remember that, Lillian?
I remember.
Yes.
That was high density.
Yes, it's 300 on just a very small parcel. So, that's the last time we saw them. Now, I explained to him that Ms. Fiore had come, she'd always come to them, or for a while there, she was coming to many of the meetings and giving reports if, she had anything to report. But, there wasn't, at one point we've heard several times they were gonna do different things, like the high density development, and they were gonna convert to open for public, then they're gonna convert to, they wanna have a permanent CUP, but we don't know what they've landed on. So he let me look through all the files, I took copies of a lot of things, and then I came back and I assembled some notes that we had from residents in the area, like Chris had commented on a few things. So I just have sort of a core dump of issues that I'm happy to share, because, and I asked Mr. Cordova a week and a half ago to let Thousand Trails know that we're going to put it on the agenda after you agreed to put it on there, so that they could come and perhaps talk. But I don't know if anyone's here to make a presentation. So I'm just going to do a list of things, and then we can jump in, but I think it's time for us to put a letter together. Maybe we can wait till the next meeting and hear from the community, so I'll just list the concerns I've heard. People in the area, apparently there's some new bright LED lights that are they're not necessarily shining in people's homes, but they're really, really bright, and so that whole area kind of lit up. They're not on all the time, but they're on often enough that it's pretty noticeable. The couple of residents actually have asked for no access from bootlegger area, and they're concerned that the razor wire on the bootlegger side is just about eye height for an equestrian, so it's kind of dangerous. So that's one thing.
That letter also said it looked like a prison.
And then it looks like a prison, that's correct. So, let's see, so another thing is that they're not supposed to use PA systems, but they use PA systems all the time. So that needs to be addressed. they have these large gatherings of over 1,000 people, which is not consistent with their operation. They have people living there, which is, county's actually investigated that and confirmed that. They also are open to the public, and you can book cabins. They have cabins there through a couple of travel sites. Expedia, I think it's Expedia as being one of them. And their original plan and their CUP, their first CUP was granted in 1981. Prior to 1981, the area operated as a day use recreation place where people could go down there to pool, and apparently it was very lovely. And then 1981, they converted it to a campground of over 1,000 spaces. I think it's like almost 1,050 spots. Then in 1990, their CUP expired in 91. Before it expired, they resubmitted and got a new CUP, just maintaining the same operation. That new CUP expired in 2006. They didn't even apply for a renewal until I think 2009 or 2010, because they were going to put in that low-income housing of 300 units and not operate as a campground anymore. They've been operating without a CUP for 13 years, which of course is a concern anyway. Another concern with this operation is I went through the EIR. It was adopted, certified and adopted in 1981 for the existing facility. And it says straight up on the assessment for water quality that the development, it was a private membership campground, and since nobody was living there, the assumption in the EIR was that there would be minimal usage in the winter during flood hazard times, concerns. So the understanding was that there was no concern for contaminating the river during flood events. Now, if you take the current flood map and overlay it with the facilities that exist today, which you can do on the county GIS system, you'll see that only the campground area that's to the east side along Arastre is actually out of the floodplain. And hundreds of their RV connections, over 100 of their RV connections, that are flush with the ground, and they're not airtight, by the way, they were never required to be airtight. They are in the floodplain also. And the concern that I have is that since people are now living there, and since it's now open to the public, the use of the facilities is substantially more than the EIR first anticipated. So I was concerned that there might be water quality concerns, right, issues. So I got on the Regional Water Quality Control Board. I saw that, yes indeed, up to the Lang Gauging Station area, which is just west of Agua Dulce, in the river, that area is slated or identified as an impaired body, and I learned today the TMDL was adopted for it in 2012. That's got a pretty stringent requirement for coliform bacteria, E. coli, fecal coliform, specifically, only those. And a concern I have is that once this TMDL it's now in place and it's being implemented, then they're going to start looking further east, which would be Agua Dulce area and then Acton area for looking for water quality impairment concerns. And let me convey what happened to the communities of Lake Elizabeth and Lake Hughes just in the last year or so. They have been put under a TMDL for nitrates and some other constituents. And every resident in that area that's captured by the TMDL, because it drains the Santa Clara River through, I think it's Bouquet Canyon or San Francisco. Every homeowner is now obligated to retrofit their septic system up to an amount of about $40,000. Even though when you look at the Regional Water Quality Control staff report, it says straight up that 99.9% of the contaminants are actually from the lake itself, because the Forest Service used to stock the lake, and so it became high nitrates. They're not lakes, actually, they're sag ponds. They come and go with geology and a number of other things. And also some stormwater runoff. But it didn't matter, the state came in and said everybody has to mitigate to 28%, every single source. So, I am concerned that if this impaired body map moves east towards Acton, well, there's only one more there. The river, Santa Clara River is broken down into what they call reaches, reach 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's impaired up to reach 7, which ends at the line gauge station right near Agudosy Canyon Road where it spits out on Soledad. There's only one more reach left. So it won't just, tag Agudosy, it's the whole area, if it comes to that. And I'm concerned about that. So I am concerned that this facility, given where the location is of their RV connections and the fact it's all in the floodplain, I'm concerned about it. So I went to Regional Water Quality Control Board and looked up, they were in 2014, Thousand Trails was directed to file what's something called a report of waste discharge with the Water Quality Control Board for all 12 of their septic systems. And I confirmed today that they did not meet that. So they're going to be getting a notice of violation by the Water Quality Control Board. This is nothing I did, I just researched the report, I saw the direction that was given and that there was no follow-up. So I called and asked and they said, nope, we were out there just recently and so we're going to issue this NOV. And I'm concerned that the county's going to issue a permit on something that needs, is not complying with Regional Water Quality Control Board's requirements on an issue that is very of great concern to this community. I don't want to get tagged with a $40,000 septic retrofit. I'm 2 miles away from the river, but that's exactly what's going to happen if this impaired body finding moves in our direction. So, so those are some of the concerns, and I thought maybe we could have, if anybody from the community has any concerns or wants to show it up, throw it in, or if over the next couple of weeks between now and the next town council meeting, we could hear from the community what they think, if they have concerns. We've heard from some residents, but obviously not all, on the issue.
I've had a couple people come up to me about their fire clearance, I guess is an issue.
Oh, okay.
That one of them actually got kicked out of the park because he kept on making a ruckus about it, so they took his membership away. And then where the barbed wire is on the bootlegger side, super overgrown, and I guess a lot of the PCT trail hikers will kind of trespass into the gate wherever it's open and sleep for the night. So I've gone in there a few times and kind of rummaged through, see where I could find a bunch of little buildings that are just in horrible state, and they're in the riverbed there. And like propane tanks are just sitting there rusting away.
This is just inside the bootlegger access?
Yeah, where the barbed wire is, we guys talking about, so there's like different, it's a huge property, it took me.
And that was the assumption that there wouldn't be a lot of use on this septic system, And I'll say this, the septic, according to the record, okay, the septic system was designed after the EIR was certified and adopted. So the EIR didn't even contemplate, about where anything is. And then I was able to find one map, and it's hand-drawn where the leach fields are. They're all, except 2, they're all in the floodplain as well. So the leach lines,
Yeah.
So, okay, so what I've got is fire clearance, and then hikers, I don't know, just call them PCT hikers, sneak in at night and
And
sleep
they
there.
use fire, they're making their
Build
campfires.
campfires, okay. I forgot to mention this, Chris did say he wanted to have he wanted that bootlegger entrance to not be an entrance. He wants it closed off so it's never opened ever. Because apparently, I guess he's observed what you've observed, so.
The other concern with the person was telling about the brush clearance is there's only really one way in and out, and obviously we have your trailers and stuff, if the fire does come, you have very limited time, so best case scenario, you're gonna be able to get in your car and leave.
Yeah, except for they can make the gates what they call crash gates, so the fire department can use them, but they don't let hikers in to go camping at night, is that right, or is that?
Yeah, they can, but they're not right now, they're just, it's chain link with, chains and locks.
Oh, so, and another thing that I forgot to mention also was that, they had the storage, RV storage, right? And they cleaned a lot of that out on the west side. But that was part of their CUP. but the concern, a problem I have is that you cannot have RV storage or outdoor storage on land that's zoned A2, even with the CUP. It's not permitted. It's only allowed on industrially zoned land. And people were living in those RVs too, so that's another thing that I think they shouldn't have any RV storage there at all, frankly.
Well, it sounds like they can't, because they're not zoned.
Well, but they
Yeah,
allow
no,
it,
I know
yeah,
they're allowed,
so
but I'm saying,
and the application I saw, they're asking now for a permanent CUP. So it'll never come back to, I don't know if the county's gonna grant it, because there's still no, staff report available, so. So thank you for, so I've got no fire clearance, trail hikers sneaking in at night, to build fires. Is that it? That was it? Is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, and then it's like propane storage tanks.
Yeah, they just have buildings and stuff that are obviously not being maintained, so they're just disintegrating and, you know, who knows when they were built and what, you know, asbestos or whatever the else they have is just going in there.
Well, I think that's, see, the path they were on was to put in the 300 unit affordable housing leasing program right there in the river, right there where their upper campground is.
Is
now.
that gonna be mobile homes or permanent buildings?
They were going to do townhomes, as I recall. I tried to find my records, but I had so many things to do, so I didn't.
Low income.
It was
type
all-
things.
Yeah, affordable lease, so it was just a lease,
You
so.
could bring mobile homes in.
Yeah, except for a mobile home park has to, so here's the thing. A mobile home park under the county code has to meet residential density requirements. So if it's a zone, if it's an A11 or A21 or A22, that means they can't have any more mobile home parks than you would for, they have to be every 2 acres. Like, Stallion, Meadows, which is, they're more clustered, but the average works out, so there's no way they'd be able to have 1,000, you know, mobile home parks there, or mobile homes, excuse me, but, yeah, so, anyway.
But with the county, after your talk with the county of regional planning, what did he say that they?
They're ready, he doesn't really have, they're just waiting for a few more clear, little things, but apparently Public Works has cleared the road and everybody's cleared everything, and he said the one thing we really don't have is the letter from the town council.
Well, for what reason? I mean, you explained to them what reason and mentioned all of the problems.
I know I didn't actually,
No.
because I can't, we haven't taken a position on that, so.
But we discussed, you discussed at a previous meeting the various and sundry problems when they did show up. And
Yeah, I did tell them that, I explained before, first the high density development, and then they've come a few times, and I explained, we got pilloried by the group that wanted to put the restaurant in, because we supported the restaurant, it was not a problem, but you can't approve a restaurant, it has to go under the umbrella of the whole CUP.
Right.
So we asked several times, just come for the whole program, we love this idea of the barbecue, at least that was my takeaway. So, I did explain that to him, but I didn't explain anything like what I just described,
the
because.
path fell apart not because of Thousand Trails, but because Steve Harbison got so ill.
Yeah.
Well, but Ramon also explained to me, I was wrong, they don't have a permit for a restaurant. They do have a permit for a liquor license though, but apparently they don't have a restaurant in their CUP. I didn't know that, so.
Not even the old one, cause I
That's
was down
right.
there for breakfast in the early days.
That's what I thought, they had a restaurant, but Ramon said, nope, they don't have a restaurant. So I'm not gonna argue with the planner, I can't, you know, I'm like, okay, I guess they can't do a restaurant, but I thought they could just like open up a restaurant, but, cause it's already open to the public, but.
It was. My husband and I used to go down there and
Yeah.
have breakfast occasionally.
Sometimes I think that, especially code enforcement agencies, they tend to be reactive, so they're not seen as arbitrary, because the first response of somebody that is cited is typically to go around and take pictures of the same situation everywhere else and open up a can of worms. So I think if you had enough input from people that said, I think that could impact my water table, I think that could impact this, I think that could create a hot spot that's difficult to address. I think that they're probably looking for something of, this isn't just your neighbor freaking out or us arbitrarily picking you out. This is the whole community saying there are broad scope of issues here. That's
Exactly.
probably why they want the letter.
And I appreciate you saying that, that's why we wanna hear what else people think, cause we wanna have a broad-based issue. We're unusual in that nobody else is facing this impaired body status creeping towards them, you know, and it's a really scary thing for me anyway. So, I agree with you.
You know, like I said, I think we need to sit down, not only with the planner, but I think needs to sit down with the deputy planning as well, Chris Perry, and talk about this thing. And this is big enough impact to our community that it deserves some real attention from the supervisor's office. So
I agree.
I think, you know, just like I think we should seek a meeting.
Well, and even beyond community, because if we're talking about impaired bodies, now we're talking about Agua as well, because we're all gonna get lumped in.
You know, and the campground septic systems are all in the SCA, or they're all in the riverbed, so this.
Floodplain,
Floodplain,
Yes.
excuse me, well, as far as we know.
cause they say the river's like, you know, this deep, this wide out there, but yeah.
Okay, the floodplain.
Yeah.
Plus they're 40 or 50 years old.
Yeah, they're all old, and maybe this is something that we wanna work with LLC on as well.
I agree,
And they,
Do we ever get?
yes, we need a response.
yeah, but there's no, I was gonna announce it in
No,
correspondence.
it's all,
but-
yeah.
But we didn't specifically talk about campgrounds, we talked about working with them on the perception that the rural lifestyle is destroying the river,
Yes.
which is untrue.
Right.
But campgrounds is.
Potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah.
And I find it, what you brought up about the EIR that was adopted in 1981, that they didn't have, you know, so much going on.
Or different,
Or
nature.
it was very different nature of the way the camp ran, and now there's so many people living there that,
Yeah,
you know, that are making an impact.
well, we should maybe ask
That
for
we
the
should ask for a
EIR.
new EIR,
Yep, I
at
agree.
the least.
We're writing it
Especially
down.
considering.
It seems that every sizable development that can affect any community's always got a certain amount of bait and switch that goes along with it. And this one is no exception, you know.
Yes.
We're
But
going
after
a private
20
campground
yeah.
with, you know, no residency, to.
Well, yeah, we'll go way back, it was day use, and then now, change, and not that you can't change.
Seasonal use, day use.
Yeah, well, and not that you can't, but you just need to go through the proper channels of getting things updated accordingly and making sure that you're checking all the boxes. And
You
it
have
sounds
to
like
do
they
it
haven't
right.
skipped
Yeah.
checking the boxes and just went to do it.
I was really disturbed to hear from Water Quality Control Board that they
Yeah.
had just shined on the ROWD request, the
For
report
5
on
years.
waste discharge request since 2014. August 1.
5 years.
Well,
It's
I would think
ridiculous.
with the county's, excitement over the SCA, that also should be somehow figuring into this, cause that seems like, of all things you could point to as an impact, Joe homeowner on his 20 acres with one house is not as impactful as having several thousand people potentially, crammed into.
Septic connections in the floodplain.
Yes, that seems like that's a much bigger, at least needs to be scrutinized and looked at closer than rubber stamp, they've been there and they're fine, so.
Which is pretty close to where they are right now.
That's what it sounds like.
I was like shocked, so shall we just, I guess we'll ask the community if you have any concerns or questions we can't answer, but we can, because we don't understand it ourselves, but.
We haven't been told
but,
anything.
The planner's name is Ramon Cordova, so if you have any questions, just,
Well, you can reach out to us, we can come, we can
Yes,
provide his
exactly.
contact info, so
Exactly.
if you email atc@actontowncouncil.org.
if you have any comments, or if there are things that you like about it, I mean, you know, it's all, you need to hear all of it, so.
I think we need to make sure that the county's aware of our concerns
Yeah.
with this ASAP.
So what do you think we should do? We asked for the meeting with Chris Perry, and then the new date's July 28th or 18th or something, but I will still be back, I will be gone. But that's for filming, so, or not filming, film CUPs.
CUPs.
Was
So-
it the 22nd?
Or 20, whatever it was, I'm not here, whatever day it was, it was day I wasn't,
It's been
which is
changed, so
fine.
what is the actual date?
It's in the 20s, but I haven't RSVP'd.
No.
So
Okay.
we could just, in my RSVP, we can say that this is, do we need a motion to meet with Chris on this issue, or just, we can just do it as by consensus? Tom is recommending.
I'm saying add this to.
Do
Or
both of them at
ask
the
for a
same
second
time?
meeting with Ramon Cordova.
I think we should.
I think we should ask for a second
Second.
meeting, because I don't
I don't,
Don't wanna sandbag them, I mean, you know,
Right.
we don't wanna say, we wanna talk about this and then.
And then
No, I
Load
wouldn't,
something
no,
else up.
I would say, but in the response on the one, we can ask for the other.
We're gonna want a second.
Yes.
meeting on
So
this
that's
topic.
what I meant to say, I didn't say that. Do we need to have a,
I think we should have a little more.
Okay.
I-
do you wanna make that motion, Tom?
Yeah, I move that we seek a meeting with the county, including the planner and the deputy of planning, to express the concerns of the community over the COD.
And on that issue, or should I wait till the ERTC, on what Connie Chung announced at the ERTC the other day? Because one of the things that they're talking about is potentially, using campgrounds as a mechanism for, interim housing
I think we
for
can move that in
homeless.
the same conversation, if we're talking.
Okay, no, but I mean, should I talk about it now, or should I talk about it under ARTC report?
Save it for the parents.
It kind of links in with what the people we met this
Yes.
afternoon though too.
Yeah.
So I don't know what do you want me to do?
Well, let's deal with the.
Let's finish the.
Okay,
let's
let's
finish
finish
this
the
one.
vote first of all.
So is there a second?
Second, I'll do the
Okay.
second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried.
So please send your comments in on the Thousand Trails. Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs side, concerns, happiness.
If I sat here and said that I thought it was a good idea that you guys agendized the topic specifically about something, and then when you contact the county, you would say that there's enough concern in the community that this will be agendized at a near future meeting, and that way they have the ability to either meet with you ahead of time and inform you so you can relate what information they have to tell us, or they might even show up here.
Yeah, well, we had done that.
I appreciate you saying
Yeah.
that, a week and a half ago.
You know how I do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And then that's,
we invited Ramon Cordova to come to this meeting tonight and
Told him it'd be a
to tell, Thousand Trails that we're gonna be talking about it and potentially taking a position on the project, cause that's what Ramon said we needed to do. So we did try to do that, but we can't, we can't make people.
So I asked you that question, and you said that's already been done.
Yes, but we'll do it again,
Yeah.
we'll do it again.
No, just kind of note that
I, yeah, I
Appreciate
I'd
that.
asked that, and it's already been done, if I would come to the meeting more frequently, I might have known that.
We love to see your bright, shiny face in the audience there.
I like your letters that I get.
All right. So, moving on from that, compliance concerns with commercial development in the Crown Valley Sierra Highway area.
Okay, I asked for this one.
Yes.
Let me just, I
Yep,
asked
no
for this one.
problem.
Okay, yeah, this is my to-do list. Okay, so two things have come up. First of all, we saw in the Energov report something going on at the Arco. So we made the inquiry with regional planning, what's happening, there was no details. And Christine Carlton, I think she emailed me back, I can't remember, maybe she called me, and said that she hadn't opened it up yet, but she'd call me or contact us when she had. And then we got an email a week ago, last Tuesday, I think it was, maybe Monday, from Christina saying, well, they're redoing their sign, and it's approved, and this is what I've approved. And I looked at the site plan, and I was a little bit, the sign plan, actually, I was a little bit surprised, because the Acton Community Standards District, adopted in 1996, says that signs for commercial developments will be externally lit, not have bright colors, they'll be consistent with the Western architecture. And so none of those, now, to be fair, Arco was built before the CSD was adopted, so none of the signs comply with the CSD, which is fine. But there are what do you call them, sunset provisions for legal non-conforming uses that, passed 20 years from 1996 was what, 2016. The county has conveyed that they're not really going to enforce the sunset provisions, so, all right. But then there are still backstops saying, well, if you have a non-conforming sign, you can't expand it. The most you can do and this is in the county code, is change the copy on it, it's called refacing the sign. And so Tina went ahead and approved this new sign that has internal lighting, so it doesn't comply with the CSD. And she said it's just a reface. When you look at the design, it's literally the entire sign is being replaced. And the new sign's larger than the old sign. So everything about this is not consistent with the code. And we've been trying to move in a direction where things are complying with the code, not magnifying that which does not comply. So I emailed Christina, and she said she would take it up with county council and so on and so forth, but the approval's already been issued. So I'm concerned about that. So far, the communication's just been between me and them as correspondence secretary, because we haven't had a meeting since we've learned of this approval. But I don't know if we want to address that. Then there's also the letter from, for regional planning. According to the non-conforming provisions, in 2015, the Board of Supervisors adopted the Rural Commercial Zoning Ordinance. And in that ordinance, it says that drive-through facilities will have a conditional use permit, which we didn't even ask for that. That was all that they did that. And so that meant that any facilities with the drive-through requires a CUP within, the code says 5 years, okay? So we wrote a letter to Shell, because they have the drive-through car wash, Jack in the Box, and McDonald's, and regional planning, saying, hey, the CUP you guys are getting, you're gonna have to get by the next summer. You got 5 years, CUPs take a long time. We asked the county to please reach out and work with drive-through businesses to make sure that they got their CUP in time, because otherwise the use is supposed to be curtailed until you have your permit for the use. And the email, the letter we received back gave me the impression, I think, Tom, you said it right, that they must think we're asking them to not allow the drive-throughs, which is not what our letter said. In fact, just the opposite. We're trying to preserve them because they've been in our community for 20 some odd years. And so it's a little startling, the response, and I emailed to everybody the letter that we received from the county. So I don't know what you all think of that, and maybe we can discuss it and what we want to do about it.
Well, when I read through that response letter, that was my first impression, that the county thought we were asking that these things be CUPs not be approved maybe, or I don't know, because, and of course we never asked for that, we never even mentioned it in comments that we like, so.
No, in fact, we were very much
Very clear that
that we wanted to make sure they didn't, which is why we were trying to get ahead of it, because no one seemed to be moving on it.
No one was. Yeah.
So maybe just a response and clarification that it's our position that we're not asking for these CUPs to be denied. We're not asking for these drive-throughs to be renewed. That our sole interest has always been in bringing signing in compliance and possibly trail connectivity. And
Because
they're just putting out very clearly what we were kind of asking for there.
Yeah.
And I thought the letter we wrote was very clear. I didn't know how it was misconstrued, but.
That's why I'm not sure it was misconstrued.
Well, the only reason I think it was misconstrued because the very last paragraph of that letter cites the recent board action for the clarification on the drive-throughs. And that language on the board action does kind of support the existing drive-throughs that are there. Right? It didn't define what is new construction.
Right.
It only defined what was previously there.
Right.
And since that was referenced in the last paragraph of the letter, I have to think they were showing us that, look, the board just said that these things get to stay.
Right. And I hope that's all it is, because, but when I look at the language, I'm looking at the letter now, they're citing, section 22, 172.050B, which is what, we said the code says, it's a the rural commercial zoning code ordinance says drive-through facilities or use, okay? So she is saying, her response says, well, the non-conforming use is inside the building. So you have to literally change the building. So we construe it as being a non-conforming structure, in which case they have 20 years. But when you look up the definition of non-conforming structure, it's actually
in terms of height doesn't meet or the setbacks, it's completely conforming as a structure, it's 100% conforming. So they've taken, I get what you're saying, but the meaning of the words, she's crafted this very carefully, citing specific zoning code provisions that when you construe structure to mean use, because they're not the same, they're defined separately, then you can get a mishmash and conclude what she's done. But when you,
Right, but you put
she's
that-
a smart woman.
Right, you
This
put
letter
that-
was by Amy Bodek, the head of the regional planning department.
If you put all that context, it almost looks like pushback.
That-
Look, there's
okay,
no way
maybe
that the
so.
CUPs are gonna be denied, blah, 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 because of this
Maybe you're right.
particular reason.
Yeah, you're.
It's just my limits.
No, that's how I took it as, which is why it was puzzling to me, because I couldn't see how they got to that point without misconstruing our entire
Okay.
reasoning.
Purpose.
But-
I'll accept that.
Yeah.
So, maybe just a, clarification.
Okay, do we need to
Of
make
intent.
a
Well,
motion on that, or
I
I'm
don't think
sorry?
so. I think we've already-
We did what we said we wanted to do, which was,
I think it falls under the original action, so.
Okay, and what do we wanna do about this Arco light? I'm really bothered by
I'm
this.
bothered by it because to me it's going to set a precedent that, well, they ignored it.
Yeah.
They did whatever, and so why can't we? And also, I'm more concerned at the underlying that we've tried to, we communicated to the county, hey, let us know what's going on with this, and then we got the after the fact, whether it was intentional or accidental or forgotten, it's concerning just because the fact that we could have at least had this discussion before, and they still approved it, okay, but now it was like that conversation never happened, they approved it, and now the toothpaste is out of the tube, so what do? They're not gonna, I can't imagine.
Oh, they can, no, absolutely.
They could, I can't imagine that they will.
But
Well, but if they don't, we
It has to
need
be
to
done.
step into it hard.
I
I
agree.
mean, at some point, our flippin' CSD has to mean something.
I agree.
And we're not asking for anything, none of us wrote this CSD. It was 20 years ago, and this community did it. That meant something. And if it doesn't mean anything, then why
Why
are
have
we
it?
wasting our time on revising it?
And to take it one step further, we haven't had any feedback to alter it to allow crazy signs. Like, in other words, nobody's come in and said, you know what's really terrible in the CSD is having all these restrictions on signs. I wanna have big signs.
Yep.
So to me, that indicates too, the community likes what's in the CSD, so we should go with what's in the CSD.
We keep trying to get there.
One more time, where I come from, and I've got some experience in this kind of stuff, sometimes the resident pushback on projects will have somebody putting in like this, well, what would happen if this doesn't work out? And they say, well, within 5 years, we'll make sure that we renew the conditional use permit or something, and I think some of that just happens, and this is a good example of it, the topic you were talking about. And then if you don't take some action, it actually looks like you are either against it broadly, based on your input to one project, or that you're favoring certain businesses or other. I think the question to the county is, do you intend to renew this use permit for this? Has there been any things that would fall outside of what was anticipated on how this project would function at its onset? And not have them dump this back on you, so they can use, anybody can come along and say, well, past practice says this, and
Right.
you're arbitrarily working against me.
Right, this is, and this, insofar as I know, this is the first time we've had a heads up on a sign change, on this, so,
Well, you see,
so now, if I'm understanding you, if we don't speak now, it's sort of an implicit
It's kind of saying,
acknowledgement.
okay, so you're coming back about these 3 projects, do you see anything that's happened or had any input that would cause you to say that use shouldn't be permitted, and not blend the two and paint you guys out as either for or against any specific
Exactly.
thing? It's rather, what are you looking at for our town?
Exactly.
That's good.
No, you're right.
That sounds paranoid, but I think some of it's real.
No,
No,
it's, trust, you're absolutely right, and
Thank you.
that's why I think it's important to, you have to take it on, I mean,
You might come from an area that takes this conditional use permit seriously too, and actually make sure they enforce them, I don't know, but,
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
not let them
Well-
fester expired for 13 years.
And then write an email saying, well, it's expired, we can't enforce any of the permit conditions.
I think I was probably more shocked by how quick it went from like Energov to like approved. It was like blink. I mean, some of that stuff seems to sit for, we say, oh, no, yeah, they got a lot of stuff to do. And this was like, we saw it on Monday and by Friday.
And
hey,
we responded quickly.
No, immediately. we all said, well, what's going on, Arco? Because I would say, that, to me, it's stuck out since they put those new lights up, which are crazy blinding. I don't know if you've driven by the Arco at night, but it's
Driving
Does it
north of
affect your
Belleville.
vision at night when you're coming
I
out
think,
the way?
yeah.
It's pretty
It's
bright.
distracting.
It's not like right in your eyes, but it's very, very bright.
So, to me, that's why when I saw art, I thought, well, what are they doing now? And we said, oh, it's a sign, and okay, well, what are you doing with the sign? And then they said, well, we'll let you know when we open it, and then the next thing was, so what's going on with the sign? And, oh, it's approved.
I think we at least need to raise our concerns,
Yeah.
within the, how this is not complying with our CSD. At least have to raise those concerns with the counties, so we could raise them at another point in time, like you just said.
Yeah, that
Issue, then we
input says
can-
to them when somebody comes back and says past practice, no, it's right there.
Yeah, at least we've acknowledged it and worked,
Okay,
done our
so-
due diligence to
So we
stop it.
we would need to make a motion on that.
Yeah.
So Kelly, how about you make the motion?
Oh, since you just said it so eloquently.
I move the Kelly makes a motion, is that right?
Okay, so I'll make a motion that should we write a letter or an email?
Oh, I think it should be a letter.
Okay.
And Jeremiah, you should sign it.
I'll do
If that's okay.
Okay, to write a letter stating our issues.
I also asked her to ask county council for the citation on their interpretation, so.
Our
Then
issues
I'll put that in the letter too.
with the Arco sign not complying with our CSD.
Yeah, I think probably part of it's a little disappointing too, just from the standpoint of if they're gonna change the sign, here's our chance to get them in compliance without forcing them to take down their sign. That sounds like they're wanting to do some of the sign anyway. Hey, this would be a great opportunity to have that occur, or you're not holding a gun to somebody's head saying, hey, you gotta put up, tear down the sign you've had and put a new one up. It's like, oh, you're already thinking of doing the sign. Hey, here's your chance to get it so it matches the rest of the county.
Well, but that's really the job of the county.
No, I agree. We should be police.
When they went to pull a permit to replace their sign, the county should have said, hey, you
Here,
gotta meet
match
the
this.
CSD.
Yeah, just-
Here's your
yeah.
options, and they,
Yeah, it should have been
and they would have said, okay, because that's what they were told.
But the fact that the county calls it a reface when it's really a replace, and the fact that it's bigger than the other sign tells me the county doesn't care about you saying, hey, why don't you just bring it on?
Yeah,
That's
I
what,
agree. No, I agree.
Tom's right, that's their job, and not only are they not doing their job, they're doing the opposite of their job.
So the last email from her, she said that the way they measure the signs, that the sign was not bigger. Did you catch that?
Yeah, she said that the developer had added the numbers of the letter area, but it doesn't matter. That means that the actual thing is even bigger still, because it's really, the way they define sign is the whole area that's taken up by it, not the individual letter area. So I got what she said, but this sign is still bigger, because I looked at the dimensions, and so and that's not how our code's written, so right there, they want to defend their, so her thing had been, she literally said, well, the existing sign is internally lit, so what the company's gonna do is, they're gonna leave the light bulbs up,
Yep.
take the face down and put the new sign up and use the old light bulbs, because it's the light bulbs that are not compliant. First of all, the coloring is not compliant, it's garish.
Yeah.
Second of all, if you look at the design, the light bulb's integrated in the sign. You cannot take the sign off and leave the light bulb in place, it's impossible. It's like nothing means anything anymore. Anyway.
So we have a motion?
We have a motion.
We need a second.
We need a
Okay.
I'll second.
Whatever.
Pam seconded.
Someone seconded.
Oh, okay, Pam?
Yeah.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All vote? All right, motion's carried. All right. Next thing on the docket, drive through CSD revision hearing. It kind of dovetails into some of the discussion.
Sorry.
So we got a card from the Department of Regional Planning, stating that it's already gone to the planning commission, the hearing on the clarification of what they mean by no new drive-through facilities or services in the Acton CSD. And, the hearing is scheduled for July 17 at 9 a.m. So we only have one more meeting before then, and that's the night before, 2 nights before. So the problem, of course, is that they still don't have the staff report. So all they have is the announcement and the original board motion made by Supervisor Barber in April. But this is going forward at lightning speed. You know, already it's ready for a planning commission hearing to be adopted. So I haven't looked at their CEQA documents, nobody's able to see the rationale. I have emailed asking there are 2 categories that they're identifying. The first category, I can pull it up, but I'll just go from memory. First category are those drive-through facilities and services that exist as of June 16, 2018. And those facilities and services that were approved by the decision maker before June 16, 2018. So we've asked, identify the drive-through facilities and services that fall under category 1, and identify the ones that fall under category 2 so we can understand what you're thinking about. Because we don't know if it's the Grizzly Bear Burger that we know wants to be Starbucks, or we don't know if it's the Primo Burger, well, it's not really, whatever.
Yeah.
The Country Club feed, not the feed store, but the drive-through fast food business. So there's not much to talk about right now, other than, well, actually there's a lot to talk about. We just don't know what the county's thinking because they haven't told us, and usually the staff report is up in plenty of time, but not this time. So I don't.
Ignorant question, is there any requirement they have it up in X amount of time before? In other
Well,
words-
since it's they're claiming exemption from CEQA. Don't know the basis. If they weren't exempt from CEQA, they'd have to have the materials out 30 days ahead of time because there's a CEQA document. But they're claiming exemption, so there's no obligation under CEQA. And I just didn't have time to look at the Permit Streamlining Act and find out what their obligations are as a legislative body in terms of putting information.
Are they just giving a definition of a new, what is considered a new?
They want to clarify what they meant by new drive-through facility or use.
And what are the 2 categories again?
Existing before
June of 2018, and
Approved.
approved by the decision maker before June of 2018. And I have my concerns because, well, you know, we've heard from this community overwhelmingly no Starbucks. I've not heard, we got, what, over 80 emails against it, different people. And I've not heard one in favor, not one. Did we get one in favor?
I know a couple.
Have they sent an email?
No, but
Oh,
there are a few.
Yeah.
People do like their Starbucks, but.
Yeah.
Well, the drive-through, but actually what I heard, we heard
Right, well, that's
opposition
hard,
to
yeah.
was the drive-through,
The
is what I
drive-through,
should say.
absolutely. On the face of it, when you look at the change to the CSD that they put forward, it seems innocuous. It doesn't seem like it changes anything. Currently, if you had a permit that was, or a project that was approved before that date, you would get it. There's nothing preventing that from happening. And the existing ones, before the CSD change, they're there, and nobody's ever said for them to go away. So I don't see how this changes anything. I mean, yes, I'd love to see the staff report and know what they're drive-through one that's already there, that's being remodeled, made larger, made smaller, changes directions. That was never addressed, and that's.
I think
And
the
that's
term
something
is
that
new drive-through facilities and services. So it could be either a new service or a new facility to replace it.
And I think,
But I don't know,
Yeah,
since the
not
day
till
you
we see it.
But the problem is that we have very little time to take a position on this, and they're not talking to us at all.
That's right, we asked what brought this on, and we never received.
No,
we were told
never
they
told.
couldn't, no, we were told we couldn't because of pending,
They said it was a lawsuit.
yeah, because
Which
of pending
tells me
litigation.
it's the
The fast food
it's
country
not
club.
Starbucks. But
But you can also have, can't you have what's a friendly, joiner in a court?
amicus brief,
Or like somebody comes in and says, hey, we wanna also speak on
It could be.
I don't know.
It could be because things have
No
gone
way.
radio silent on Starbucks. Now, this town council has gone on record saying, cause if they do a parking, what do you call it,
Permit.
parking variance, like eliminate the parking requirements, if they do that, that's gotta go before a hearing. And so we have put them on notice saying, you need to tell us 30 days notice on the hearing. They're required, because that would be subject to CEQA. Although they might say they're exempt from CEQA, I don't know.
It's great how that works.
But yeah, well, you have no idea.
I'm exempt from taxes.
But see, one thing that concerns me though is everybody says what was approved was a Primo Burger. Right, at the
I mean,
Country Club fee.
on its face, that seems to be what it wanting to be clarified, is they wanna set in stone saying, hey, the existing stuff can't be touched, and the things that don't physically exist yet, but were approved, can't be touched.
But that's always been the case.
But that's what I'm saying, that's why it makes no sense,
Right. So-
Why bother clarifying that,
right, so
unless they felt that it was not the
What if we
case?
do this? What if we file a Freedom of Information Act and get all the information we can on that?
I
Even
did
though
that
we
4
heavily
weeks ago.
redacted, we did that.
Yes.
And what came back?
What came back was the original motion that Supervisor Barber made, a letter that had to do with actually the selling of the property for the county fire station, which I sent that to you. So something completely unrelated. And then another one was an announcement of, I think it might have been the November 2016 board motion on approving the Primo Burger. But it's not a Primo Burger. It's,
Fast food restaurant.
and if we do anything, I would hope that we would at least write that letter, because I think the staff report's going to identify the Primo Burger. Well, what was approved by the Board of Supervisors was not a Primo Burger. It was not a Primo Burger. Everybody thinks it is. It was an unidentified, unspecified, 3,000 square foot fast food drive-through business. And since the county's approved a subdivision map on that property, that parcel can now be sold to anybody, including Taco Bell. It could even be one of those double green burritos / Carl's Jr. It could be anything. There's nothing that requires a Primo Burger. So we need to at least clarify that, because if that staff report says, well, it's just to clarify that Primo Burger's already been approved, we need to at least make that clear. It's like, do not tell us it's a Primo Burger, because it's not. Because it isn't.
Right.
I mean, I can read the conditions to you.
Right.
And that was one of the reasons why, I was so concerned about it, from the get-go.
Well, and I would say, in light of shifting paradigms on cannabis, I mean, it could be a drive-through cannabis facility.
Oh, that's
to
true.
that point too. I mean,
Sandwiches.
Be any.
I'm just saying, it could be anything. So, I mean, that's why it's concerning. It's not just, oh, we don't want a Carl Jr. there. It's like, well, it'd be fine if it was more narrowed down to what it is, but it's so open-ended.
And what bothers me is, we've always taken great pains as a town council, at least as long as back as 2005 that I'm aware of, to never say what we want and what kind of fast food business is acceptable to us and what isn't. We've never said that. But it'll be sort of a reversal of roles if they come back and say what's been approved is a Primo Burger, because that is not the case. And I'm not gonna be here at the next meeting, so whatever you guys decide in terms of taking a position, I would ask that you at least, because you have to take a position, but by then we should have a staff report.
Maybe.
Maybe, yeah. But
I
at least factor that in, that it really clarify that it really isn't a staff report. And I will provide you guys with copies of the conditions, and you can point to it and say, don't,
That meeting is
whatever
on
on
the
my leg and
17th.
tell me it's raining.
On the 17th.
It's on the
Yeah,
17th.
so-
Yes, at the planning commission.
Right.
So that's the
Oh,
first
the
step.
regional plan.
Yes.
Oh, it's not at the Board of Supervisors.
No, and then it's gonna sail, well, they have to go to the planning commission first, because that's
Ah.
under, then it's gonna sail right up on board.
Okay, so this is
But if the staff report doesn't come out until a couple of days before this meeting, like we've experienced in the past, then we've got such limited time.
I don't know what to do.
Well, that's why, you know what, then I'd at least, maybe, since we're here, that we at least
We could
agree
take a
that we talk.
position that says, we looked at this, we don't see how it changes anything, therefore we ask that it not be changed.
I would wanna take something.
Maybe they're wanting to put a definition in the CSD.
Yeah. See, I don't know, but I would want to call them on it if they call it a primo burger. I would urge you
Right,
to
okay.
do that.
So we
But
need
I,
to wait
other
till
than,
we
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but other than call them on something, do not tell us it's one thing when it really isn't.
Do we need to, wait to see when the staff report comes out and make our
Well, I think we could
Stance
probably, we
next.
could make a motion to respond once the staff motion comes out based upon that. I mean, I think
Yeah.
we kind of generally know what our position is, we just need to know how to formulate it based upon what they're saying, but I mean, I think we could,
So are you making that motion?
I don't, can I make a motion?
Oh, maybe
I
not,
can make a
maybe.
motion.
So I'll move that we respond when we have the staff report. But don't write this part down, I got a friendly amendment to my own motion. Have in there that if they identify a primo burger, that our letter clarifying it is not a primo burger,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
that makes sense. Sounds crazy, but it makes sense. It's like, no, I mean, it's
It's
crazy.
county,
No,
what do you
no, that's what I'm
expect?
saying.
It's schizophrenic.
By the way, Jeremiah, we've been through 3 CSD, or bylaw reviews,
Yes.
and nowhere in there does it say that the president cannot move.
Okay, good.
Oh,
Well, there you go.
well.
No, I don't think-
I can make it.
Well, you've already made it, but now we know. Well, I appreciate that.
We need a Larry King to keep us, hey, you, point of order, you can't do that.
And if we call them and say, when is the staff, have we ever done that before? When is the staff report coming out? Because
I think I did ask Richard on my personal email,
okay.
and he said, you know, as soon as we get it out, I think is what he said.
Ken?
Again, going down the rabbit hole, I think the delineation where there doesn't appear to be any is they're saying that this is a drive-through, it's been a drive-through, it's built as a drive-through. I would avoid using trade names at all, whatever coffee shop it is, has no bearing on anything. I think the line of division that's being set up is, I can just switch a sign, from one business to another, and it's my prerogative as a business owner, as long as I'm permitted to sell whatever I'm selling there. I can just do that with no input from you. On the other side of the coin, you've got developments that aren't built yet, and say, for example, there was a flood and that land got affected some way, your grading permit would come back into play when it was developed. And so by that, you're kind of, in a roundabout way, the properties are already there and permitted and existing. They're safe regardless of what, because you just rebuild them as they are. This creates a whole new division over here of, well, maybe and if, and I think the bobber's gonna start moving around if you bite anymore, so it's just, there's 2 separate things here.
Right.
And I personally wouldn't use any trade names, it's just whoever is legally permitted to open that based on what you've approved. It just sounds to me like, maybe I'm naive here, a lot of stuff is being dumped back on you guys to be the bad guy about very specific things and trade names and different businesses, so it's gonna be, well, they didn't want it, rather than, this isn't permitted.
Right. I agree with what you're saying, but there's some background on that, because my friendly amendment to my own motion won't even be relevant if they
Unless
don't
they don't.
identify.
They
If they
use trade
keep it
names.
generic, then I got no problem with that. But there's one thing that you should be aware of, that we went through many hearings and many discussions, and down in Los Angeles, that this whole thing was good and reasonable because Primo is a local serving business. They're not gonna pull cars off the freeway, so on and so forth. So it was very important to the developer that the community understand and we understand that it's Primo Burger that's going in there. And so a lot of people in this town supported it because of that, because it's a local, it's only known in the Antelope Valley, there might be one down in LA. So,
I
but.
personally know of 1,000 people that come from Wisconsin the first day.
Well, that might be true, but the problem is, what the board adopted
Right.
is not a Primo Burger, and so I don't want that.
You don't want it jumping into a national thing that everybody's, it's a
Exactly,
destination.
because we had just a few months before this, the board did not approved Taco Bell because it was a national chain, so it's like, you can't have it both ways, you know, so, I agree with what you're saying. Anyway, so, cause I won't be here at the next meeting, so.
Alright, so,
Did we vote?
no, we have the friendly amendment, we did not, I don't think we had a second yet.
Oh.
So, I'll second it since I'm not restricted any longer, chains of the power.
Okay.
Alright, any, discussion?
Jeremiah seconded?
Yes. All in favor?
Okay.
Alright. Motion
So
carried.
somebody's gonna have to write that letter, cause I'm not probably using the internet
No.
in Canada.
Yeah.
Jackie, when you leave on your trips, you go, Jackie's gone. You're unreachable, and
Sometimes.
always, which I give you a lot of credit. It's not
Yeah.
easy. It's not easy
Yeah,
to
I need you to
stay
teach me,
off the grid for as long as you can.
Well, in this case, I literally will, because I'll be in the middle of Alberta, Canada, there's just,
That's
phones don't
good.
work up there.
That's good.
Their phones work, but ours don't, so.
Okay. Alright.
We need a vote.
We did.
Yeah, we did.
We did.
Yep. Alright.
So somebody, we
Yeah,
didn't identify who's gonna write that letter, though.
Well, here's the problem, I think I'm gone that week as well.
Okay, well, I guess it'll leave the three of us.
Well,
That would be Tom then.
Yeah, well, and.
If somebody, yeah, I mean,
I
it's
have
help,
to-
so.
Well, assuming we get the staff report before, then we can tag team and work on together. Alright,
I mean, it's July 1st, when are they gonna give us the staff report? I get frustrated over.
August 1st.
Are you gonna be gone on the, are
Okay.
you gone on the 11th?
I'm going 15th.
On the 15th, okay. So we can
Oh,
discuss this all
golly,
on.
you might not even have a quorum.
Yeah, we won't.
No, the 11th is the meeting, is our meeting.
No,
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 it's
15.
15.
Oh,
Today's the first, so 14.
oh.
Yeah, but we're good.
Yeah.
I can
So,
probably
yeah.
call in.
And Dylan can call in too.
Yeah. We'll make it work. I'll be on vacation, but not cut off.
Now, I was accessible last year on the East Coast. In fact, Iris Chi called me and I was in the middle of Valley Forge.
Wow.
And I talked to her, so.
Alright, speed limit law.
You also want to pick this one up?
Yeah, well, I know we got, we received the correspondence letting us know that there's been some possible changes in how they're going to look at, setting speed limits. Because in the past, the problem has been that you open it up and for review and then everybody goes really fast and the speed limit actually goes up. So,
So we got we were informed by Chuck Boswick, who said that the state is looking at making some changes, and they're looking at input from counties and things as well, which would maybe get rid of this, everybody drives, was it the 85 percentile that they base it on?
Yeah.
So they look at the 85 percentile of the average speed, and that's where they set your speed limit, unless you can become a residential or a business district,
Or school district.
or a school district with proper density.
And I've always had heartburn on Crown Valley because it's 50 miles an hour there, right near the middle school.
Yep.
And the only reason is because the middle school doesn't extend all the way to Crown Valley. So, you know,
Right, and the section on, the next, with the one past Grand Valley going up,
Antelope Woods?
No.
Sierra.
Santiago, thank you. Santiago between Soledad, it's 55.
Yeah, oh, where Middle Arc is, yeah.
No,
Soledad?
no, just between the freeway
Oh.
and Soledad
Okay.
Canyon is, it's crazy.
So the list Chuck sent showed that there were 2 people from LA County who are going, they're not going to be on the committee, but they'll be advising him. One of them is Matt Dubio, who, was, yeah. So I sent an email saying, hey, I'm glad he's on this, and I don't think he knew he was on it. They had asked for permission to be on it, but they hadn't gotten confirmation, so Chuck sent him the list. Oh, it's great.
yeah, no, it's
So-
excellent. It's a
so-
big,
It's
something to
huge.
work with, so.
Yeah, yeah, you helped put that, SRTS thing together, so, I think it's a good idea to write a letter of support for that effort, if that would be helpful. And I was hoping Chuck or Donna would be here tonight, but,
I mean, Chuck asked for a letter of support.
yes, that's
But
true.
I guess the question is, what methodology are they gonna come up with?
Well,
do we have any suggestion? I mean, maybe it's premature, but
Yeah, I don't know what to
what
do.
would we like the community, how we would like to set some speed limits around here?
Well, maybe we should throw that out, and hopefully some people in the community will give us back some information, maybe the school board. Did I email the school board on the
Yes,
speed
you
limit
did.
thing? Okay, good, so,
But
or
even-
maybe it was just on the Sacramento thing.
I think it was on the second.
I'm on a number of distribution lists, and City of Sacramento, I get notices on for a variety of reasons. But their city council just voted to change their ordinances that would allow them to adjust the speed near all of their schools, their public schools, their private schools, and their charter schools. And I thought, well, if they can do it, why do we have to do this whole state law thing? I didn't understand that. But it's like, well, if they can do it, maybe we can do it too, so. And I think I did CC Superintendent King, and perhaps you as well. So that's another thing, yeah, that,
Well, I think that we should definitely write something, but yeah, do we wanna be specific or just,
Yeah, I don't
hey,
know
we
what
think
to
it's
tell
great
them.
that you're looking at this?
Well,
But just
I think
reduce the
it's-
speeds or
Yeah,
something.
I think we definitely need to support the idea that they're looking at getting rid of this antiquated
Well,
methodology of setting speed.
I can tell you one thing, I think something that I think we could put in it for sure is to bring it more local, so that it's not having to go through the state and.
Bring more local control.
Yes, that it could be set at a more local level, if it's a case that it does have, obviously Sacramento's doing something, so how are they doing it, but the bottom line is, if we have more local access to be able to set those things, that's a lot easier, thing to roll through and get somebody's ear locally than it is to go all the way to Sacramento and
Yep.
have this big rigmarole.
How about we do, on that, how about what we do is we support this, and we are looking forward to you engaging us early so we know what you're thinking, so we can weigh in on what you're doing. That's why I wanted to loop in Mr. Dubio from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I agree with, all of what you said, and I agree especially Jeremiah, what you said, that the speed limit is only merely a suggestion. If there's nobody out there to enforce it, then,
Yeah,
I mean, that's,
Doesn't mean anything.
that's one of my biggest concerns with Soledad. It's only a matter of time my family's gonna get wiped out.
That's gonna be, that's gonna be.
I don't drive it that much, but I wouldn't be surprised if I don't even think it's most of the people that live here. I might be wrong, but I see it at 4:30 in the morning when people don't even respect the stop sign at Lockabon, and, it's so irritating.
It's definitely commuters, for sure. I know that the divider for CHP between Newhall CHP and Antelope Valley CHP is Ward, right by the high school. And they have like a resident deputy kind of thing for Alamo Hills, it's Newhall CHP.
Is that why he's always there at their
That's why he's
meetings?
always there.
Okay.
And
that's the
with-
secret.
That's,
Yeah.
no, what's nice with him, it's like you guys ask me to do something, it gets done pretty quickly. Same thing with him, like when I have issues where like, hey, like I need this kind of done. He goes and sets up the trailer, gets a couple guys, they do, speed traffic enforcement. This last month's been kind of like no one available because they're doing ENAC and they're just inundated that. The development is coming in, they, I guess they looked at their, whatever sites and they hadn't written the same like forever there, so. With Antelope Valley, I get to run around, it's whoever their watch commander is like a sergeant, and it's whoever happens to be on, and then I don't think it ever gets passed on. That's the feeling I get. So I don't know if there's something.
The only time I see CHP is out here is when they're doing movies, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
And-
I'm not trying to
say,
put it
an
on
accident's the only
CHP and
thing.
say it's their
Oh, yeah.
problem, but
We've even
it
asked.
really kind of is their thing. I mean,
We've
I'm
even
not-
asked the CHP if we could hire them, like they do for the movies, to pull people over. We'd find, this community would contribute to a
they
fund.
totally would, because
Yeah.
you get gravel trucks racing down Soledad when
Yeah.
kids and families are trying to come out of Metal Art there.
It's terrifying, yeah.
It is so.
But we've never gotten any traction, so if you ever can help us break that loose, we would pay them
I would
like
love
the
to be able
movies
to
do.
get an Antelope Valley representative out here for stuff. I'm not traffic trained, he knows how it works. I can't even do like radar. I have no idea even how to turn the damn thing on. I pull
I
over
mean,
people.
if somebody's reckless, we.
Right, no, I'm
pull
saying,
over, but,
yeah, it's like, it's different.
Well, crossing over the double yellow on Soledad is pretty darn reckless.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's
I
what-
watched it twice today on my way here.
It's a daily thing.
And if I witness that, obviously I'm gonna do something about it, but it's being able to, it's different when you're able to coordinate with like 3 guys, one guy's a spotter, he's running radar, he's reading with the guys ahead, hey, this is the car, like, that's what they do. You know, me trying to do it by myself is not gonna.
They do it all the time on the 14 northbound there, they have one guy standing on the overpass, and they have the other, the other cars.
Angeles Forest Highway and Soledad,
Yeah.
when it backs up all the way up Angeles Forest, you got people going on the wrong way of the street to get past everybody to go to that stop sign. And somebody's gonna get killed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It might be time to ask CHP back out again, we haven't had them out.
Somebody else can do that.
No, I'm not looking to do that, I'm just.
I don't have a problem going over there, I don't wanna step on anybody's toes, but.
Yeah, well, you know what, that's great, if you got.
I know it's Gil Hernandez.
Yeah.
And he's a really nice guy.
That's what I heard, he's a really nice guy, I haven't talked to him, he didn't even wanna return my call, I know, but like I said, I don't wanna step on anybody's toes.
We're more than willing to put you on that task.
I'll see if I can get hold of him, I'll go knock on his door.
Okay,
You can get a task.
On the
for that as
station
well.
door, I don't know if I can actually be allowed in, but.
that's awesome.
Cool. Alright,
So I
think where we're at is.
should write a letter of support.
Support,
Asking
along with
for
an ask that we
local
be.
control and to be looped in on, at the earliest, to sort of give input on what
Yeah,
they're
and
talking.
keep us abreast of it's.
Sorry to get off on that.
No, it's all in that same topic, it's all related, I mean, that's, the overall goal is not just to get the speed limit, lowered, cause that at least help, so when there is enforcement, we can do something, and,
Exactly.
but at the same time, we need to deal with the enforcement aspect, which is, I think, universally, typically, the problem out here is that we're so far removed that it's,
So Jackie, was that gonna be your motion?
Yeah, so I move that we write a letter of support, this effort, asking that we be sort of looped in at the beginning to provide input, and seeking some degree of local control on speed limits. I sort of have it written down,
You wrote
Kelly.
it, okay.
I can pass it down to you.
Okay, good, because the first time you said it the opposite way around.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, it's okay. Here's it for you.
alright.
It's on the bottom.
Second, alright, any other discussion?
Good.
Alright, all in favor?
Aye.
Alright, all opposed? Alright, motion's carried.
I'm sorry, you said looped in throughout the process.
Loop us in from the beginning of the process so we can provide input, try to shape it, hopefully shape it. I don't know if I use the word shape.
Lower all the speed limits to 10 miles, so when everyone does 10 miles, not to get a speed ticket, they're driving the speed limit.
Sounds great.
You
I'm
know-
in, I'm all in.
In Japan, the fastest you could drive on the island of Okinawa, unless you're on the expressway, which is just one road, was 60 kilometers an hour, which is 36 miles an hour. And there, if you go the speed limit, you're actually speeding. Everybody drove at least 10% less than the speed limit. So this is the entire island, all the streets 30 miles an hour. No joke. So there is, they speeding when you're actually doing it.
And did they have less accidents?
Oh, yeah, they had very few
And it was
accidents.
wonderful.
Well, I
And
would
people
imagine-
could, since they're not allowed to drive while you're talking, people, except for on the main arteries, on the side streets, people would just, when they get a call, they just stop and talk. And in the middle of the road, they didn't pull on the side of the road. And everybody's very polite, like, oh, okay,
Okay,
go around,
finish your
you're
call.
okay. It's like- it's
Oh,
really
wow.
neat, it's like weird.
Alright. Announcements, correspondence.
As far as the mail, there wasn't any mail today, which was highly unusual. I always get the mail on Monday, so, from the county, and so I'm wondering if the meeting wasn't tomorrow. Because we always get the booklet and.
There was an agenda that came out, right?
Yeah,
Was
there's a
there?
meeting tomorrow.
Okay, we just didn't get it
The
then.
supervisor's meeting this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not one this week, it's next week.
There is
Oh,
one?
Okay, that's
There's
why,
not
Oh, interesting.
Oh.
That's
because of the
why-
holiday?
It's-
because of the holiday.
Yeah.
So that's why we didn't get anything in the mail.
There was an agenda though on Friday.
Maybe
Okay.
saying that there is no.
Maybe, yeah, I didn't read it, I just saw that it came.
That's
through.
probably what it was, that's
Okay, and then here are the names of the two people that Jackie.
Yeah, we had, here you go,
There's one for each one of you. and then
meetings
gave one to the
this
deputy.
afternoon with, okay, so we had correspondence from a group called Shelter Partners. They are
putting together, and correct me if I'm
Go for
They're,
it.
they're working on behalf of the county, putting together a plan for addressing homelessness in basically the Antelope Valley area.
Unincorporated.
Unincorporated, yes, they're not, the city of Lancaster and city of Palmdale have their own plans. So they're going out and asking what homelessness looks like in communities, what sort of solutions there are for homelessness, and what could be done. So they have also asked us to participate in a survey, and I explained to her today, that we haven't responded to it because we haven't taken a position on it. So I told her what I could do was I missed one, so I screenshots of their survey, capture it, send it out to you guys, and then at the next meeting, you guys decide what answers you wanna give. If you wanna supplement it, and then go ahead and send it to her, so if that's okay, I told her we could do that, but we talked about it tonight, so that's one
And
thing.
it was an extensive meeting. Jackie and I met them at 4:00 and we didn't get done till 6:30, so it was very informative about what they're trying to accomplish in the unincorporated areas of LA County.
Yes, it's a big undertaking.
It's a huge undertaking.
Do they have any literature or anything?
No, and do you want their,
Sure.
okay,
Oh, I've got an extra one, I think.
Okay.
They have given some information out at the ARTC meeting 6 weeks ago, or whenever. But it was mainly on the program.
nice catch.
They have a huge warehouse in downtown LA, and they give non-perishable, items to homeless, socks and t-shirts
And food also, it sounded like they got,
Well, if there's storage, they have non-perishables, but then they
Yeah.
coordinate, like, Walmart gives their extra leftover whatever to, what was that
Mhm.
group? Grace?
Grace Resources.
Grace Resources,
out here.
up in the Antelope Valley, so they're plugged into that as well. So, we told them that Pam shared her specific experience with homeless people, and I shared with them some of the things we've had, the discussions we've had over the last few months, the houseboat, the non-shipworthy houseboat, SS Minnow or something.
3 hours.
And how vacant properties, an RV will show up, and 2 or 3 RVs will show up, and, how there was a gentleman who were living down at the park for a while, but a lot of people live in the, Thousand Trails, and they're living there, they don't have another house, they're not recreating. So we explained that's what homelessness was our experience. And she asked if it was something, if many of these have local connections to people here. We told her we didn't think they did, because a lot of times when people have a family member or somebody they're connected to that are homeless, they'll usually put them in an RV under the lawn.
Yeah, in their own yard, yeah,
Exactly.
not in some random.
Exactly. So, and then we talked about some of I was gonna report out on the ARTC, some of the solutions that the county's coming up with, so I'll hold on till then. It was good, and then, so then we had correspondence from Ms. Shakanaka Fuller.
Jean Chakanaka.
She is interested in being on the town council. And I had explained to her that we've already had somebody who's, I don't know if I said that, interested in being on it, which we need to talk about tonight. But also, that we're quickly approaching the time when we can't seat anybody more, because it's gonna be and I did look it up, Kelly, the cycle starts August.
Yes, we
Oh,
middle of it, yeah.
Okay.
August, the middle? did you
Middle of
say?
August.
Okay.
Oh, I thought it was early August.
Well,
So-
early August.
It's whenever we put out our announcement.
Announcement in the.
It's so many weeks ahead of it. It's right near from the
It has to be
second
not
week.
less than 60 days or not more than whatever it was. But anyway, so that's what I responded to her. Then we have correspondence from the CPA, the Clean Power Alliance. Now, I went to their workshop in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago. It was the day after the last town council meeting, and because I wanted to see if they were going to, what I wanted them to do was reach out in communities and come up with sort of local sources for
generation, rather than gigantic, you know, another 1,000 acres of Antelope Valley being destroyed on the hot power lines. And I have lobbied now with them twice to talk to our school district, and because our school district, high school, other areas are interested in putting solar up on the parking lots, that they could do that locally generated, because the people who've spoken to our school district have told the school district that they're not gonna be selling the power to Edison, and that it's just for the school, and I have called them on that, because I know for a fact that's not true, because the peak generation will be in August, when the school's generally not open, not a lot of power being used, the office will be open. So all of that power is either going to be wasted, and that's when the power is most valuable to Edison. So I said, you know, you need to, I'm concerned about the rates that they quoted our school board, because I think they're very high, and that they should at least talk to the school board about putting up, sorry Ken, I went ahead and said this, but that they should at least talk to the school board about putting up potentially these shade structures on the parking lots, so that our school district doesn't get hammered by outrageously high rates through this PPA, or not PPA, through this arrangement. So hopefully they'll be doing that. But to look at local sources, and they had tables, it was a workshop thing, and overwhelmingly, everybody in that meeting was calling for local distributed generation, not remote generation. So that's very consistent with what.
Good to hear.
Yeah, it's really good to hear. That's what we heard from. We heard that from Roberta's husband. Can't remember his name. You know,
Yes,
he wanted to know what
yeah.
you're going to be doing in our community. So hopefully they'll be reaching out to some school. I don't know if our school district, but at least.
But was there any thoughts of reaching out to individual homeowners, maybe offset
Yes,
the cost of this?
I recommended that as well, because I pointed out that the 30% break is leaving this now, and if this is really what you want,
This is the way you can
plus
do
you
it.
need to work with local people on this PSPS, the power safety public safety power shutoff generation issues. So
And-
nobody else mentioned that, because I was the only one there who wasn't from the city, obviously. So you know, I did my best to convey it, but now there's a survey that they want us to put out to the community and the town councils, excuse me. So I haven't gone through the survey yet, but it is to our town council, so if you guys could, you know, look at it, decide, maybe each of you individually do it, and then, since they've asked for individuals and the town council, I think we can each do it individually, and then post it on our website, and the others can, you know, input, maybe send it to the school district if they, I don't know, so, anyway, so that's CPA.
Did you send a survey to us?
Yeah, they sent a certain, they sent it to the town council, cause I signed up and went to this as a town council member, not as a resident. Cause we voted that I could do that.
Yeah.
I think you're sending it out to all the residents, because I got one.
Oh, did you? Okay,
I haven't looked
That's
at
good.
it, but I think I got one.
okay, good,
Seen something like that.
well, good, that's good, well, maybe we can post it and then other people can, I haven't looked at it yet, so I don't know what it says. So, I think, and then okay, so then, the other correspondence is on the sustainability plan. And we had we sent a letter out on that. Mr. Garrow, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer for the County of Los Angeles, came up here and met with us this morning, which was really awesome. And,
Jeremiah, here's the cards from the people that we met with this morning. And Tom, you can pass those to Tom. Kelly, you got
I've
them,
got
right?
mine.
And I've got mine.
and they got here a little bit early, and they drove through the town a little bit, and, I pointed out areas where, for example, you know, county doesn't, you know, maintain the roads and all this stuff, you know. I won't rehash what our letter said, but I think we have a lot of concerns with their plan. And I think Mr. Garrow really heard, well, you know what, maybe you guys should report out on it, because
I did.
We'll
Yeah.
just jump in when you, yeah.
He absolutely listened to, and had some of the same concerns, and said they were going to go back and look at the plan, and, hopefully make some changes that will, we'll be happy with.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think all three of them were very
They were very
attentive to what we were saying, and,
Different
especially.
issues that we have.
Yeah, especially the time frame and the fact that building permits were
bad.
difficult to obtain.
That's
So-
right, well, and the language was written so that it was very strong and very,
Yes.
it was like no discretionary.
No by right development.
Development, yes.
He understood that the term development wasn't even defined. And I explained to him that half of Acton is actually in the sphere of influence for Palmdale. So when the sustainability plan says we want to keep urbanization in the urban area and not expand beyond the existing urban boundaries, I said that is Acton. We are in their soil. We are right next to Palmdale. And I said, so is Little Rock. And for Lancaster, it's Antelope Acres and Lake LA. So when you say ban development outside those areas, you're talking about banning our community. He goes, well, that was not our intent. We were mainly concerned really with the Centennial. And I said, well, you might have found a lot of people in support of your position on Centennial if you had outreach to rural communities, which you did not do.
Right.
So
right.
I think he was surprised to hear that.
And even though we said that may have been your intent, but the way it's written.
Was
It
black.
bans our area.
It was black and white.
Bans
It was
our area, and the problem, is going to come up that 15 years from now, that may have been your intent, but you're no longer there. And somebody else is gonna read this and
Say, hey, we
make
can't
of it
develop
what they want to make of
interpret
it.
it their way.
Implement it with the force of law. Yep. They were very concerned
Yes.
about that. So I'm confident their goal was to get this to the board by the beginning of August, but they have committed to changing those sections that we have called out on, so.
That'd be very.
I didn't go to this meeting, but I have a different take on this whole thing, I'm sorry.
Shoot.
The whole idea that the county feels that their responsibility towards sustainability is by excising certain areas out of their area of responsibility is ridiculous. Okay? The whole premise of this thing where they said, okay, well, maybe it was aimed at Centennial, but what they're really doing is saying, we don't think you're sustainable, so goodbye, you're finished. We're gonna just shut you down. And that's not the purpose of government. The county just needs to find, and I'm sorry Chuck's not here tonight, but the county needs to find solutions on how to bring state sustainability to everybody. Not just cut out a piece that they consider to be a cancer because it's too expensive, or they don't agree with the lifestyle, or whatever. So this whole sustainability plan, I'm sorry, is garbage. And I don't believe it's ever gonna go our direction, no matter how much talk we do. Now, I appreciate the fact you spent time with it today, Jackie, but someone's gotta stand up to this thing. And it's just backwards.
It is.
Does that make sense?
No,
Yeah.
it
I
does.
mean, their responsibility is not to fix things by removing them. Their responsibility is to fix things by coming up with solutions.
Yes.
Every other group, let's say you're a homeless group, you're a minority group, you're a church group, whatever, every other group, they will go through all kinds of things to provide you services. When you're a rural group, their solution is to shut you down.
Or remove enough services that you
Too
can't
many
exist.
excised.
That's right. And the county's doing it through taking. I mean, they've come to the conclusion that we just take it from you. We take it from you with the SCA, okay? So suddenly, the general plan's agricultural land in the SCA is no longer agricultural land. Okay, if it's not, 4 years undisturbed, it's gone.
Yep.
It's a taking. So all this A2 land up here, where we have the vineyard up at the Aliso Canyon, you've got Blum Ranch that's not been touched, they own property all the way up the canyon, all that stuff gone through taking. And they do this saying, well, this is how we're gonna sustain. This is
agree.
not this is not the role of government, period.
I agree, and even further than what you're saying, the only government model where I have seen the government says, we are building a city here, is Soviets
Yes.
and North Korea, and I have actually seen, what is it
Yes.
called, Peace City on the border of North and South Korea. I have seen it, and it's chilling. It's like this little city right in the middle of all these.
So it's Donald Trump apparently.
Well, that's true.
Sorry.
Well, I didn't see it as close as he saw it. I mean, I wouldn't be here if I had, but there's something, from that sort of authoritarian control of the government, then it's not a government of the people, by the people, for the people.
Absolutely.
It's a government over the people.
And
Yeah.
I honestly though, when we talked with him today, he was surprised. For example, he said, we were, on the way up, we were talking about your school district. We were surprised you had a school district. And I said, well, it's probably one of the oldest ones in the state. And they said, how do you do that? And I said, well, we
You have
have,
kids,
we have, well, no, because we're a small group, small country. I mean,
It's feeling like that.
Community, I'm sorry, we're a small community, and I said, well, I think, you know, with Arco to say, there are kids that come from outside, you know, also we have some Palmdale students and so on and so forth. And I said, but when the county implements these bans, it makes it difficult for us to do this sort of
To sustain the
slow,
schools.
low-density development that makes us not have to have infrastructure. Like, we don't have a sewer system for a reason, we don't need it. You know, we don't have roads because we don't need them. We don't have to have, you know, whatever. So, I mean, we have some roads, obviously, but yeah. So he was really, I believe, he was a little surprised when he got here, because we moved over, we'd set the meeting up for here at 11, and then they switched it to 9:30, and I didn't connect that the library was open till 10. So we actually met here at 9:30.
We need a key.
No.
All work out.
No, we moved over to Perkinut and we all had tea, it was lovely. But they were surprised that we had a coffee shop and a school district and, you know, so, I don't mean to sound condescending.
No. I just find it amusing because this is.
And you've very clearly stated the problem with all this. They were surprised that we had a coffee shop, they were surprised we had a school.
Yeah.
district.
Okay, their responsibility is
Should be to know those
their due
things.
diligence to find out what is up here before they decide to take it away from us.
That's why I was chuckling, just because I think it's amusing, because we keep running into this, we ran the SCA stuff too, which was, do you realize that taking 80% of somebody's property, like what that actually means? And they're thinking in terms of like, oh, they're little shoebox things.
Saving the bugs.
Yes, instead of actually coming out and seeing like, oh, the bugs are all safe because there's nothing on this except for this one house.
Yeah.
Okay, we should leave it alone. And things are, if they would just enforce the things that are in the books, like in the CSD and everything else, there would be the kind of development that would support these kinds of things that wouldn't be.
That's
So-
sustainable.
Yes, and on its face, this is about as sustainable as I can imagine a place being. Yes, it doesn't fit the cookie cutter, vertical living that they want
Urban
to.
planner
Yes,
sustainability,
but
yes.
this is really sustainable in that sense. So I think that's why I chuckle, is because, yeah, do you think if maybe you're including rule stuff and you're making rules up, maybe you should understand what that looks like, visit
Maybe
it
you
with
should
them?
take a road trip before you start making
Well, but
decisions
you
for us.
guys, you know what, you guys need to understand they're not going to.
I know.
And it is our cross to bear to, every time this comes up, to educate them. I am exhausted by doing it.
Exactly, and we've been doing that forever, and every time we do it, it turns that we maybe get a little piece of it corrected, but the overlying document,
Archie idea.
the overlying idea never goes away, it just gets stronger and stronger. We've gone from SCA, from a very small area to a very large area, and now we're looking at, now maybe the sustainability will be adjusted, I don't know. But if it's not, or only a piece of it is, now we're looking at something much larger. So it just grows and grows and grows.
Although I will say, we have made headway. The AV plan, calls rural communities basically the jewel of the I mean, and it does a lot to protect low density development. I mean, I don't know that it gets bigger, that we have to fight it, just they come at us from different directions.
It gets bigger, the goal of taking gets larger and larger with every one of these
Yeah.
plans.
Plus,
Maybe
Jackie,
so,
what
yeah.
did the girl say about Caltrans also doing?
Caltrans is doing a sustainability plan,
But
but they're not really working
Yeah,
with.
but they're not working together.
Good, that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, but I gave her some ideas to start that conversation with respect to the 138, which
I know.
doesn't address us, so we won't talk about that, but,
Have you talked about when they come up, you have to introduce them to rural living, because the only
Yeah.
thing they've got on is Green Acres. Before you guys come up with something, go to our website, this is what we have, this is our life in Acton.
That's a great idea.
And they can, review it, and then you don't have, and then you can do the drive around as an additional feature, but at least they get an idea.
And they
and
didn't
you
invite
share.
us on the drive
right.
around,
Yeah.
but we would have done that, like we've done in the past with the high-speed rail authority.
Well, they got here early and did their own drive around.
But if they would have said that they were
Yeah.
gonna do that, we would
I
have.
washed my car,
We
and
would
all the
have,
seats.
we would have
drive
very
around.
gratefully gone with them.
Yeah.
So to hear that man say, well, you have a school district,
Just an idea.
you know.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
It
since
is a good
18,
idea.
what's the founding date, Ken?
I don't know, maybe I should break up my campaign video camera and crank out a couple more like I haven't done in a while.
You wanna, we got a committee, can
Okay, Ken, go for it.
That would be,
Well, if now's the time, I appreciate you bringing the letter in. What I have to do on my end is, you all know that there are laws that govern us, including the ability for us to talk like this and be open like this. But what I encourage everyone to do over there, which is why I made the comments I did the other night. You all know that I load up my comments on YouTube every board meeting afterwards, so you can kind of see and analyze what I'm talking about. But the superintendent reports, the safety report, I think that the breakthrough on, you know, whatever anyone says about when that was planned, or praise and glory for the non-participants or whatever over here, I think that having that brought forward and talking to us in open session, under the superintendent's report, whatever that would be, you're able to say, hey, here, these are our concerns, and this is where we think you're involved. As somebody that's a parent of a kid, not speaking as a board member definitely, is I look at this and say, I don't have a crystal ball. I can tell you that having to come up with money through sponsoring this or being self-funding creative, and I think y'all know what I'm talking about, is this just feeds that type of thing. I just want to know that our school district is able to service the kids that are coming here. I think that the death of the school district comes with nobody coming here. I see that people get on the internet and on Facebook and sync things and play that game. But what I'm interested in is when you come in to talk to us about this, as it's agendized there, you heard me support and thanking you for coming in and presenting this. My questions to you will be just blunt. What does this mean? And short of us enrolling kids when they come in the door, I don't know what there is we can do, but I can tell you what my focus is, and that's on sustainability of our schools and mainly sustainability of the programs in our schools, and also the equity by which those programs are available to all users. So I'm glad you're bringing this stuff forward to the board. Again, if we all play nice and understand where the rules are, and we can say, we've come to the brink here, you can at least say in your correspondence that we've discussed this in open session with the school board and understanding their constraints, blah, blah, blah.
okay. Well,
So just I guess a little background on what Ken just said. I had met with the superintendent for lunch, and I brought him our response to the sustainability plan. And I told Larry King that, you know, when the high-speed rail was coming through, Mr. Stasso spent a lot of time coming up with a possible number of students we might lose, which could tip the viability of the school district. And, you know, looking at the first draft of sustainability, the development, the curtailing of the development here pretty much is gonna tip the balance of the school district without a doubt. So I asked Larry to bring it to you guys, and he did. He brought it up in the superintendent report. And Ken graciously said, you know what, let's make this a standing item, and we can have it in the superintendent's report. So, not being an expert on some of the rules and regulations you have to follow, but I do believe, since it's agendized in his report, you can actually get some input back and forth on it, because people will be expecting to hear about it. So, I think it's a really positive step that between the town council and the school board, I think we're coming closer together than we ever have. And if there were any school board members listening, we really appreciate it. So, and I think since school board is a government state county entity, you guys have a lot of say. You may not realize it, but
Quasi-legislative is what they talk about in court cases.
quasi-legislative. But you're, state of California and LA County, and, you know, we're advisory. So whenever the school board will get involved and say, hey, we've looked at this, and we think A, B, and C, it carries a lot of weight. Because as you know, people in government rely on people in government before they rely on people outside government.
The great unwashed.
So, I hate to say it, but that's the way it works, you know, so I think, you know, I'd like to see more collaboration in the
I
future.
think we've got a couple examples of when stuff is agendized, even if it's to say, we've wore ourselves out here, we can't help you. It is one possible outcome, or we can do this. But having none of that just fuels tribalism in the community, and that's my main concern about opening this up. And then it turns into, well, he doesn't like me. Well, if there's a big group of people out there that fit that thing, that has nothing to do with where we're going and how we need to get there. And so that's why I support this stuff regardless of what the opinion is. I think it's healthy. I think it helped over here. On the speed limit stuff, I think that I would approach that by talking to the people that put the stop signs in, whether they're effective or not, by saying, hey, we've seen some success here. We see stuff driving down. I think we're headed in the right direction. I think that happens with that kind of collaboration. I'll always have an ear for you guys.
Well, thank you, and I didn't realize it's now an agenda item, so
Under the superintendent's report.
that's terrific.
Well, nobody said no.
Oh.
Yeah, so.
Okay. Well, hopefully, honestly, it'll be a short-lived thing, and I'm always optimistic. I know people think I'm a, whatever, complaining about everything, but I do all this stuff because I believe we can make a difference. And so I am optimistic about the meeting today, and hopefully, we should see a new plan within a few weeks.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll be so good that you can take it off the superintendent's report before it even gets on there. But, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I know, I see your eyebrows raised.
No,
It's like,
look, I would love for them to come up with a sustainability plan, how we can sustain our community.
yes.
And the main thing I would want to see in that plan is for to have more local control over what happens here.
Well, it's almost
To just follow the flippin' CSD.
Yeah.
That would be number one in the sustainability plan. You follow our CSD, we'll be sustainable. But, you know, it also has to address things like well yields
Yes.
and water hauling
Which,
and,
Aguadulce Town Council is really rocking.
yeah,
That's good.
and Edison, how are we sustainable when Edison turns the power off for 36 hours? So,
And some of this might come from the fact that they're trying to shoehorn a county as diverse as LA County, with stuff from beaches to urban to all these different zones, and saying, here's how this is all gonna be sustainable, rather than, like you said, pointing to CSD, maybe putting sustainability, you know, identifying certain areas, allowing them to build in a sustainability plan into each respective area.
Recognizing that there is no one snow sustainability.
No, there's not, it's impossible.
Well, he did
Yeah.
say that I heard him say this morning that they need to add an element about rural communities and how they can be, how they need to be preserved. So he said those
yeah,
words,
and I think that's great. Well, the one thing I just don't know where the idea of comes from that we're just gonna stop your development.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where does that come from, where they think that even makes sense on any level?
Because they think it's a, I love you so much,
Or
that I wanna
they can-
protect you the way you are and never change.
To be fair, I said, page 70, the targets, and I said exactly what they were. He's thumbing through his thing, he's like, and he opened his book, and he admitted, he goes, yes, those are pretty hard. He agreed that they were pretty, whatever. I can't remember the word he
It was
used,
cut
but it
and
was,
dried, and
he recognized that was way beyond the pale, and it was not appropriate. I don't remember the exact word he said when he looked, he's like, yeah, those are pretty harsh, I think, he said a word like that, I don't remember exactly what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of done here, but it's beyond harsh. Doesn't belong there. The whole idea of sustainability by taking somebody's rights in their land, you know, the one thing that the country's founded upon, property rights, you know,
Yes.
and taking those to sustain it, It's not sustaining anything.
It's counter.
That's actually contraction, you know? That's contracting the county down. It's
Yeah.
not sustaining it, so.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
the
which
belief
you
of the
would-
state government and the county government, I believe, is different than that. They want here to enforce what they want, and their ultimate goal is here in whatever way it takes.
Well, that's the Soviet system. I'm pretty sure
Just
we're
sends
not
all
that.
reservations.
We need to keep from being that.
No, I agree, and that's, I totally agree with what you're saying.
I wish you would have been there, Tom.
I wish I could have.
I know, I mean.
But
it's-
maybe I shouldn't, because I'm still kind of winding up with that.
No,
Yeah.
I think it would have maybe helped, you know, and we're.
I don't know, cause I think his position is kind of almost like, Mr. Sustainability Guy, you shouldn't exist. It's
No,
kind of-
I don't think Tom would have said
No,
anything like that,
I don't think it would be.
But it was an eye-opener from what I saw, from how that man reacted to Jackie when she said, turn to page 70. It was a wake-up call for him. It's like, well, did you write this or
Didn't know it was
what?
there.
But that's what concerns me about all of this, is that who,
Who
he's,
Yeah,
yes,
who
and the
wrote
buck
this?
stops where? It gets,
You know what, I'm gonna give guys a
And
huge
he's
amount
the
of props.
officer.
That guy has had no fear of coming here, and I'm sure he knew
Oh,
all about the Acton Town Council, and he was.
oh no, I'm happy to hear that he showed,
Yeah,
he
he
didn't send
was-
it, he didn't just send it down to me or somebody else. He
Not
came.
only, he came with his two top people,
yeah,
they were like,
two deputies.
she's the sustainability, I'm sorry, she's the transportation
Yeah.
she's a transportation engineer, I think she said.
Yeah, she was, but I don't know what the other one was.
I should have
One's
asked,
a,
but
yeah.
Rita,
Both are listed as
program director, yeah, which is
That's
flipping
fantastic.
high up, this is like, you
Okay,
know.
program director.
No,
said
I
she
do
was.
appreciate them taking it seriously and.
It must not, I'm just saying, it was probably hard for them to, they girded their
Well, why
loins,
do
as
they have a
they say.
negative opinion of us, Jackie? Come on, they don't.
No, not negative, no, but just very, these people are very intent about protecting their
They
community.
didn't look
So
afraid.
get ready.
But they
Yeah,
shouldn't be
don't get
afraid
promoted
now.
from bear and expect that we're not gonna
Yeah.
be like, what did you mean by this? We're gonna
Yeah.
say, this is how we
Here's the
read
deal.
this.
Yes.
Well, this is how we read this. Tell us we're wrong and
Well,
explain why.
Jackie's right there saying page 70, and he's flipping through his thing going, oh, okay, I guess that's a little rough.
And he agreed, but he agreed, so
Well, I hope, I will share your optimism until proven otherwise.
I want Tom to come back.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I can do.
Okay, I'm reeling you guys in together, so that's an indicator of something. I think that just as if we were all to jump in a vehicle and run down and look at the tent cities and the sidewalks down in LA, I think it's pretty clear to me that, there might be a slight of that there's affluence out there and everybody's on their big ranch house and enjoying the water and the fire protection and all that, while we're 2 years away from an election and I'm trying to figure out why homelessness is going up double percentiles and I need to get my streets clean and come up with high density housing or I'm gonna look really bad. And I think that's probably a push on this, and I think that some of the staff members that are saddled with doing the work because they like their job and the things that go with it are probably, I'm not sure that they believe it as much as you do, but I think that somebody got kind of nonchalant about how places like us were just dismissed in the interest of let's get the homeless off the streets in downtown LA. Downtown LA is in Los Angeles County, am I right?
So it's.
Yeah.
For now.
So, yeah,
But they have
I'm
lots of
interested, I'm really interested, again, as one person on the school board, Jackie, you're good at coming in and just lining up the bullet points. Don't get out in the weeds because we don't understand nuclear physics. But just lay it out and let the board members comment about what they see this could do to us trying to be sustainable. I've told everybody for years, when you start funding things through things that aren't actual cost recovery and there's revenue coming in from that, that's really not sustainable.
Right.
So I'm looking for sustainability. I think that we've been able to keep our enrollment kind of, there was people saying it would be 800 by now. We're floating right at, 10, 1100 right in there, and I think that we're keeping it there. I would very much like to keep that there at least, and I'm not looking at accepting something that is going to say, here's the end of the road for you all. And when you get to the end of the road, the quality of your programs, especially the stuff that's different besides math and reading and and the basics that will make people employable. I'm not interested in watching those go away. So I think when we can make that tie, that's when the school board can step in with something.
And that makes sense. And the whole issue of the position we took in that letter, well, a number of positions, was like, you need to let us grow. Because not only do we have the student base, but you also have the developer fees, which helps for your facilities, and, there's a lot of things, So, and wherever we can find nexus, obviously, we always try to do with the school board, so.
I think we gotta be in the room together to say, I don't want anybody in here saying that the Acton Town Council says no to everything, so therefore stomp all over us whenever you want. I don't want that. I'm not silly enough to think that if somebody proposes that there's gonna be 27 houses on 9 acres, that the game up front isn't 10 in the end, so it looks like a victory when the 17 that we're never gonna be there
Yeah.
disappear.
That happens too.
I can figure that out, so.
Yeah.
But again, if we all come together and talk about it, we find our limits, and then there's no background chat of, well, they don't want this, and this guy will listen to me and all that. I hate
Well, that's always gonna happen, but you just have to push through it, so. So I think it's gonna be good. I think what they come up with is not gonna be horrible, anyway.
Well, if the standard is not horrible.
It will be better than what it was.
I think Pollyanna is sitting next to me right now. I'm not
I'm
sure.
just to come out and say that not horrible is.
Not good enough.
It's not good enough for me, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay,
And
We gotta do better than not
And
horrible.
I'm gonna say.
I think it'll be better than not horrible.
And I will withhold judgment until
Yes.
it's approved from the pudding, and then we'll go from there. I can't react to something they haven't done or not
That's
done
true.
yet, so.
He said I asked him specifically if he thought he was gonna be able to complete this project in this 30 days. And he,
And one question I did have is, did they still stick with it's non-binding?
Yes.
Mhm.
But I said you need to take out the language that.
That makes it sound binding.
Not makes it sound binding, that makes it binding.
No, it's good.
Because, but I also said you have language in there that you're going to look at the adopted county plans and revise them so that they
Are
to,
compliant.
yes, so that they're, yeah. He's like, right? It was, I said it was on, it was target,
I want that job.
45, I think.
What
it
did I
was.
write?
Yeah,
What did I
and
do?
he looked at it, yeah, that's not really, I could see how you would read it. I'm like, no, I'm not reading it. It's
That's
what
what
it
it says.
says,
Yeah.
How much power does he have?
He's the chief sustainability officer.
That's meaningless, it's a title they've recently.
Did he
given out.
write it?
Pardon?
Did he
No,
write it?
I don't think he wrote
I
it.
think his staff, under his
Yeah.
Under his
auspices,
supervision.
we'll see. I mean, we'll just see. His two main gals were there and.
Under his auspices, and he didn't know anything about the areas that it affects. I'm sorry, I kind of lean toward
No, yeah.
Me too.
suspicion of.
I'm not dismissing Tom or yours. I'm just, what I saw today gave me enough hope that maybe it won't be.
I hope you're right.
I hope you're right, because in the recent experience is that we get in a situation, we'll take SCA for example.
That's great.
It
Yeah.
looks like suddenly we're making headway and everything's great, we're talking, ideas are going back and forth. As soon as our interests are not in line with the county's interests, it all stops. Just like SCA, the relationship ended overnight. And hopefully that won't happen here, but that is the MO.
Yeah, we'll find,
Well, like I said, we have to wait, I think no matter what, we have to see what they do.
But the scary thing is that they're gonna,
Staff to put in these points.
we understand that a lot of what was in the sustainability plan was to prevent another centennial project.
he said that more than once.
And I said, well, we're not centennial
Right.
project, so, don't Rich.
And he said, but we can't put that in so many words in our report.
Maybe they
Well,
want us
he certainly said it's the impetus for the whole thing.
Right.
But that's not the way this.
Well, that was just, to the extent that we're
Don't talk
not centennial, that's another thing that gave me encouragement, it's like, well, if that's what you're trying to carve out.
We're on the
just-
same page, we just need to get onto the same page.
We're not even close to being.
No, what I mean is that we don't want this to turn into Centennial either.
Exactly.
So we're on the same page as far as that. Now, getting to that page in the
Yes.
story,
Yes.
we have entirely different pathways to that. Theirs is to restrict, restrict it to an, overkill, taking
Yeah, they would
a
be
sledgehammer
all-
to
they
apply.
restricted
And
all
what we're trying to say is,
development.
hey, we need some nuance. If you're going to not have another centennial, I personally, I'm like, the framework has already been laid out, it's in the CSD, we've laid out, hey, things have to be a certain size, and there's certain density, that's all been laid out. So this, to me, screams of classic, too much time on their hands legislation stuff, where it's like, hey, we need to have more laws. It's like, well, what about just enforcing the ones that are there? No, we need more laws, because that's why we're here, we're gonna make more laws. So this is, to me, strikes into that place where it's like, well, how do we fix this? Well, we need to really obliterate any chance of this happening, and meanwhile, we're collateral damage, we're the shrapnel, we
Yeah.
get squashed in the process.
Right,
Although
but, none of that makes sense to me because, I'm sorry, Centennial, that area was protected. And they unprotected it to develop it and then re-protected it. So,
Yeah, I see.
yeah.
And I think that's what he was saying, was sort of that response to that sort of thing, because this District 3, I believe she abstained on that vote when it came up for the Centennial Plan a few months ago. So, the people I met this morning, in my opinion, were people who are dedicated to doing the job right, although it's a job that that we can't put our arms around because they haven't put their arms around us. So, but I think that's gonna change. I think these are dedicated people, they're not just, iron rice bowl people.
Just as long as they're hugging us, not choking us.
There's that.
Well, there's not a knife over there.
Yeah.
Like,
So then the other correspondence is, I'll just report out on the ARTC, there's a lot of important stuff in the ARTC that we need to talk about, so when we get there.
alright. Okay.
I did see today, come in, and I was looking for the phone, there was a joint flyer that came from Lackey, Barger, on the fire,
In Santa Clarita, they're having
right,
a meeting.
so there's having some kind of a public forum in Santa Clarita,
When?
Probably soon-ish.
Oh, I'll be gone, probably.
pretty soon, but one of the topics on there was utilities, and they alluded to the,
PSPS?
yeah, I'll never be able to remember that. But, yeah, the proactive shutting down your power because, something could happen.
We should send somebody down there to address that on behalf of our community.
I'm not sure what the format is, I just saw it before I left, so.
I said Santa Clarita, we're the very high fire hazard
I
area.
thought the same thing, but.
All the way out to San Bernardino and Wrightwood.
So one additional, thing on the sustainability, I was at the school board meeting, Lackey's, Brandon Roque was there, and I gave him a copy of our comments.
Okay.
So he forwarded them on to,
Okay.
Tom Lackey.
Oh, good, that's good, that's good. So let's post that fire meeting on our town
That's what I was
council
looking to
website.
see
if we
if I
can.
can find
It was on Facebook, is where I saw it.
That's where I saw it, that's the problem, we
you
didn't get it
didn't,
in
so
the
we
thing,
didn't
so that's why I was trying to pull it up and see.
On that post, it was like 25 miles an hour wind and their shit power down.
That's every day here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like,
Yeah, that's like.
New North
most
Korea,
days.
no power.
So in other words, we'll live with no power?
Well, Wednesday's already
It's
no
really
power,
sustainable.
right?
Yeah.
Really, there's
In
no power?
certain, no, in certain areas.
Oh, yeah.
The other piece of correspondence, we had the request from somebody from a solar company who wanted to come and talk to us about that. And
I asked him to come to speak during public comment.
yeah, I saw that, but maybe we can take it a step further. If he'd be willing to come and talk to us about the technology and what options are available, and not come in to sell his company, if he would more educate us on what's out there in terms of battery backups and all that kind of stuff.
Generators.
Yeah, my only concern is that his bent is gonna be one way, and I don't wanna turn this into the
I don't either,
community forum for.
but if he'd be
sales.
willing to talk about what possible technologies are out there and if they really do solve the problems, I mean,
Or
I
we
think
could
you
have
just-
a meeting and invite the two that we know of.
Yeah.
Then you're at least not favoring one over the
Well,
other.
not in favor, but to keep them off of the sales floor. I don't know if that's been possible. I
Well,
think it's-
that
I'll
or,
defer to you guys on that.
yeah, I don't know, I might be open to saying, hey, we can give them a slot before the meeting that they, we can let people know that, hey, 30 minutes before the meeting, should be people talking about options.
That's a good
for-
idea.
And that way, it's not, part of the meeting, they're here, they can come up in the 5 minutes before and say, hey, if you still have questions, we're here, available in the back, or whatever. I'm game for that, I just don't wanna see time, we're already so packed with so many things going on.
Well, I don't know if anybody's interested in getting educated on what the off-grid solutions are for power.
It's basically just battery.
Yeah, but what battery technology, how long does it last, what's, you know, all that stuff's important, how much of it do you need, is it really practical? Because technology's changing all the time, so.
Is the county still controlling not putting windmills around here? Just
They've only.
personal ones.
The only thing that I'm aware of that they have prohibited utility scale wind farms. To my knowledge, they have not prohibited individuals.
I know there's at least 2 or 3 in Shannon Valley.
Although they do make
But
a
I
lot
don't know
of
how long they've
noise.
been there, they've been, from what I hear, the neighbors say they are pretty noisy, but.
But if you live far away from
Yeah,
it,
they didn't bring.
or the wind blows towards you and it blows the sound that way, cause you don't.
But, yeah, I don't know, I'm assuming they had, at least one of them I know, in that area, one of the neighbors had commented, they, either the county or somehow they were asked whether they were okay with it, which I'm assuming was a CUP, or some kind of thing they had to go through a process, and they signed off, and then their comment was, the only reason I knew that was because they said, I wish I would've never done it, because it's so loud. So anyway, but so there was, and that was probably within the last 5 years, I think, from what I gathered, but. Alright, alright, so council member comments?
I don't think, I'm good.
Got a lot of
I
comments? Comment or not?
Pretty much said it all.
Alright,
Oh, wait, I do have something.
Okay.
I got another phone call regarding the real estate signs. It's so frustrating. Apparently Brian Palmer put and I didn't go to look at it, a sign right down across from the bank. And somebody says it's a billboard size sign.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's probably a 4-page library.
Right on Crown Valley, right across from the
It
bank.
must have just been put up because I just noticed it.
The
Okay.
yellow one, right?
And it's advertising.
Oh, no, wait.
The
are you
property, but it's oversized apparently.
Yeah, it's
and
across from the bank and
From the
across
bank.
from the
So it's
market.
advertising the land that,
Yeah, it's where all there
Ron
used to be a
Hahn.
bunch of trucks and stuff there, and they're
Ron
gradually
Hahn's
moving
property.
stuff off of there.
it's Ron
Rolling
Hahn.
truck.
Does that make sense?
There's nothing the county won't do anything about.
I know, and then the directional signs again are a big issue. I called the one agent that had her directional sign right here at Crown Valley, right in front of, Don Chado's,
Oh, yeah.
and she agreed to remove it. The gentleman that's repeatedly got them all over town, he won't return my phone calls, so. Do you want me to call the road department and start getting them out to
Are they
remove?
in the right of way?
Yes, they are.
How about this big one down there across from the bank?
That's on the property, but it looks like it could be real iffy. That it, to me, is what I was told.
Yeah,
Road department? Okay, I'll be the best.
Just like signs, we don't pick and choose, right?
no, it's
No.
It's just a hold up rule.
We've got Acton Community Standards, we've got LA County
Do we? Really?
ordinance. Okay, Jackie.
I'm sorry.
if they're not enforcing the.
Well, that's a
Do they
reversal.
really exist? It's like, I
Troy
think
has a
therefore I am.
comment.
Sorry. No, I was just gonna ask, do the directional signs apply to the open house things on
No.
one day, the temporary thing?
No, those are temporary, these are
Yeah,
These are.
on the 4x4 posts,
Yeah.
stuck in the
yeah,
ground
there
in
were a
the
bunch
dirt.
of them like we talked about.
With an arrow on the top, because goodness knows we don't have GPS to get us to any of these listings.
Right.
So, lots of phone calls, and I think people are calling me because they knew I was, past realtors, so. And some of the calls are from realtors saying, what is the town council gonna do about these directional signs? Okay? I will call the road department.
That reminds me to ask about some past correspondence we've had over that.
Yeah.
I think the real estate association or something about.
Well, which one?
Whatever.
Our local Acton Library brokers?
That's basically
Gary.
you, isn't it?
Well, I've been, I didn't go for a while. So, I haven't said too much, but I'll go. But I think I'll just rather make the call to the road department.
Start, yeah, I think we start there.
They do too. You know, follow the rules. Come on, guys.
Yeah, we're just asking.
That's why we have laws regarding driving, so why can't you honor
Right.
the little rules too? Okay.
Is this, you said on Ron Hoffman's property?
Ron, yeah.
There was some rumor going around that Dollar General had already purchased that property. That's not true,
I think the
suppose.
response we had back was that they had moved on from that.
Yes,
That Dollar General moved on.
yes.
They might still own it though.
They might, but
Well,
yeah, I
no,
don't know.
Ron hasn't sold it yet.
Yeah.
We were told that it was in escrow, and I verified that it wasn't in escrow.
Because we'd gotten I think somebody from the Dollar General's development or their agent or whatever, we'd gotten a message saying, hey, you know, Dollar General, blah, blah, and then we responded and invited them to come share what they were gonna do, and then we got a response back saying
They were,
that we moved on, you know, kind of thing. So there was no indication that, I didn't get any indication that they were out of escrow or they had sold it, or just they were pausing it, I don't know.
well, now there's a real estate sign there,
So now I think we've got an answer,
Yeah,
at least at that location.
okay. Well, that's where it was gonna go.
Well, yeah, but I don't know, it was the reason they moved on was because
Oh,
maybe
got
they
it.
wanted to go closer to the freeway or
Yeah, that's
something
true,
else.
that's what they wanted.
So, interesting, I was up in, Fraser Park a couple weeks ago, and they had Dollar General there, and that one did sell alcohol, which was interesting,
Most of them do.
Yeah,
so.
and
Anyway.
one's in Lake LA, or one in Lake LA does.
Is it $1?
No,
No,
no, at a
Dollar
dollar.
General.
Should
No,
we go shopping?
They explained that Dollar General is just that we make sure that you take good control of
That
the
you have a
dollars,
dollar
you
to
don't
come
spend
into
too
our
much.
store.
So it's not a dollar store.
Okay.
It's a dollar, it's a big difference actually.
And by the way, you have to put a quarter in their little, carts to be able to use it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No, but it's
Goodness.
smart, because they don't, the carts get put back, people wanna get their money back.
Oh, you get the quarter
Yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God.
It's like Aldi's.
LAX, yeah, it's like down $5 or right there or something. Okay.
All right, so any other councilmember comments? Committee reports. All right, planning coordinating.
So I'm gonna combine planning and coordinating with ARTC. So ARTC is a big meeting. We had county planning there talking about their housing ordinance activities. 4 plans are in the planning stages right now. Inclusionary housing ordinance, which means, affordable housing, making sure that development has affordable housing, that affordable housing is created. Interim and supportive housing ordinance, which is basically, longer term facilities. Supportive housing, we understand now, is for people who need, services on a continual basis, not just, drug addiction or what have you. Then there's the affordable housing preservation ordinance, which is to prevent the loss of existing affordable housing. And then there's by right housing ordinance, which is to streamline approval for multifamily housing development. So those are the ones that are in the planning stages right now. And we spent most of our time on, I believe, was the interim and, supportive housing ordinance, I think. Then the draft is already available for something called the compact lot subdivision ordinance, which I haven't even looked at yet. I don't even know what it means for our community. Since they're not gonna allow any subdivisions anyway, maybe nothing.
To the point.
And then what's already been approved is the accessory dwelling units ordinance and the density bonus ordinance. So I'm, on the discussion there was a lot of discussion about the interim housing. And the first announcement was, this is a countywide ordinance, and so it's going to affect countywide development. And of course, the first thing I said, but it isn't really countywide, is it? And Mr. Lamb and Ms. Chung looked at me and they said, what do you mean? I said, well, according to your own maps, District 3 and the entire San Fernando Valley are omitted from any consideration for development of interim and supportive housing. And I said, when you look at the actual areas, these are the maps from their plans.
when you actually look at the areas that they've got earmarked, 95% of the areas are in the Antelope Valley. And so Connie leaned over and she looked at me, she said, so why is that, what are your concerns with that, Jackie? What are your problems with that? And I said to her, I don't have any problem with obviously developing a plan for interim and supportive housing. You know, having people living in streets and in tents and
Seems like a bad idea.
is undignified, unhealthy, and wrong. We all need to address this problem. But to the extent that you're actually cutting out areas and keeping them out of the
Sharing the
spectrum
burden
of
with
who's
that.
going to carry it, we all need to carry this burden. And it's not okay that Malibu and Beverly Hills and all those areas are omitted, and all of the San Fernando Valley, and most of the areas are here in our community. So I said, so I don't have a problem with supportive and interim housing, and I don't want you to take that away, and that be your takeaway. But we all have to share the burden, and it is not okay in the District 3, and that all the San Fernando Valley is completely omitted from any consideration. I was pretty not happy about that. And and I told her those are my personal positions, or opinions, because we have not discussed it as a town council. But since they're at the beginning stages of these ordinances, excuse me, especially the interim and supportive housing ordinance, it's something that we might want to take a position on. Maybe in August. So I do want you guys to all know that, and the maps are available on their, in their reports, and I can send them.
Was there any kind of timeline when they're looking to, like, in other words, is August gonna be, I mean, I know there's a million other things, but is that?
Yeah, I think
Realistic
August
that-
would work.
Okay.
And these 4 plans are in different stages of development. One of them, I can't remember which, is just, we've had these meetings and there's nothing else, there are no documents. But the other ones, there's more specific
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we
maps and
weren't
things.
Gonna have, you know, that we'd have some runway to be able to give some input, so that would work.
Right. So I think if nothing else, we recommend that everybody be tasked with carrying the load. And the report said, you know, to justify why District 3 was out, it said, well, District 3 has the Santa Monica Mountains, and those areas are not really, don't lend themselves to a lot of development.
Well, good.
So then I
Yeah,
asked
that's
Connie, I said, why is that not true for San Gabriel Mountains, Sierra Colonna Mountains? I don't understand why you're picking one area and applying a criteria that carves them out and not others. It doesn't make sense. If it's good here, it's good there. And then I said, and even if you say, okay, Santa Monica gets no development, why carve out the entire San Fernando Valley? There's a lot of unincorporated area up there. I think even parts of Porter Ranch, parts of the North Chatsworth, the Simi Valley area, there's a lot of that's unincorporated. So anyway, so that's a concern I had. And then the next thing that she was looking for input on, feedback on, we need to get back to her on this, is dealing with the temporary, what she called it, the temporary solutions for housing, so to bridge people to get to their homes. And when she described what they were, I said, well, they're temporary for the people who are being helped, but they're definitely permanent in the place where they're being helped. And she's like, well, I guess that's true, because that's how they perceive it as a temporary solution. So let me throw these 2 things that she had offered. The first was to either develop or amend an ordinance to allow for safe parking areas in churches and elsewhere for homeless people living in their cars. And I said, I understand how, because right now, homeless people in the cities are living in their cars in very unsafe conditions. So obviously it's better to have them in a safe place. And I said, this is again my personal opinion. I said, so if you're thinking, I guess that's been done in a lot of places where the churches have done it, and some people have complained that, hey, that's not allowed, that's not a church use. And other people have said, well, it's a church use because we're a church and we're using it that way. So they develop an ordinance for that. So all I recommended was that if you're going to do that sort of thing, at least in our community, you need to look at the facilities that are there at the church in the first place. So if, for example, if it's a small church with 1 men's bathroom, and one's a women's bathroom, or 2 bathrooms total, whatever, you cannot issue a permit for 100 cars to park there at night, because the system can't take it. So you need to, if you're gonna do this, you need to limit it to the number of, the facilities that are available, and you have to have a permit for it. So, and then it has to be, the permit has to mean something, so that when 100 cars are parked there and it's only been permitted for 20, then you need to go in and shut it down, or do something.
Curtail the use until.
Curtail, yeah, and that's it, because I pointed out a few examples of where permits really have permits mean nothing.
Yeah.
Once they're approved, it's like the county walks away from them. And if you're talking about a new ordinance, then I personally am going to step into it hard until you develop an ordinance that has teeth that actually, meet together. So that's one thing, and the second thing was amend the ordinance to remove the 90-day restriction for campgrounds so that they can become residents. And then, when she mentioned that, I talked about the EIR, and at least for 1,000 Trails, and I said, there's probably the biggest campground in all of the Antelope Valley is in 1,000 Trails, and it's huge.
Maybe even more than the Yellow Valley, I mean, it probably is all of it.
Maybe, yeah, that might be true.
Because
too.
I'm thinking even in the Angeles Crest, none of the campgrounds that are even run by the Forest Service are remotely that large.
Yeah.
Not even close.
And these all have hookups and all that other
Yeah.
stuff, so I said, I don't, they haven't said what campground they'd be doing this at, I said, but, me personally, if you go down that path, so be it, but I will request and insist on a whole new EIR, and I explained to her what the EIR adopted in 1981 said, and that this is a substantial change. This is people living there year round, and all the septic systems are in the river floodplain, and they're 40 years old, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So she's looking for input on those type of ideas. So I don't know if you want to discuss it now, or ask her to come up and give a presentation on it, or what you want to do. Maybe
What timeline are they looking at? I mean, I'm sure it's. as soon
she's
as
looking
possible.
for input.
But what I'm saying is if we tell her, hey, we'd like to have you come up in August, is that?
I don't know. I was not smart enough to ask that question. I should have.
Who was this that you were talking about?
Connie Chung.
Okay.
And she really did a great job on the county plan. When we, I won't rehash history, but she really pulled it out of the fire for us on it. So I think she'd do a good job on this too.
Are you telling me that the sidewalk tent cities that I was just talking about a little bit ago are suddenly gonna be moved out here more so, 1,000 Trails?
I wouldn't say they're going to be, but they're exploring all options to give
So
these
in
people a
other
safer
words, we
place to
make the
live.
streets of LA clean, everybody gets the vote.
Yep.
And meanwhile, it gets displaced out here, right?
Well,
I think
that's
I
what
got
these
that about an
maps
hour
show.
ago, yeah.
That's what these maps show, and it's very disturbing. But I would not say that that's the thing, and I'm not a NIMBY person, so I'm not gonna go down that path, but you have to make it work, and it has to be appropriate, whatever you do, and it has to be even. I'm sorry, I know you work in Beverly Hills, but they're completely exempt.
Yeah, but we have, within the department I worked in before we were all transitioned to Public Works, they have an ambassador program, they have outreach things. The help is there, the social help is there. They have beds and homeless
Yeah, we don't
shelters.
have the services.
They have transition,
And that's
so
what we
if
said
you're
to
gonna
the
make,
people today,
if
too.
you're gonna make it meaningful, it's, again, I'm not on the school board now, I'm just balls graphing, God knows what comes with that. But if you're gonna move people somewhere, you've gotta have a way for them to be successful, and
Yeah,
not be
infrastructure.
long-term
You
enslaved
need to
to
have
their
services,
condition,
Right.
correct?
and access, right?
Yeah.
Which we made that clear today.
I mean,
Well, yes,
someone-
except for, we didn't
someone-
make it clear to Connie, because.
Someone just said, think of the kids that would come to school district, that would be great on one end, but I don't know what condition they're in, what kind of services
Well,
they
no,
would need, what kind of
this is-
support
this is
they
supposed to be-
would need.
Yeah, this is supposed to be transitional, so that's the other problem too, is this is not supposed to be you come
We
live
need
in
this to
campground
happen
for-
right now, and then we just go, oh, I didn't.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is that I think that I agree with your statement that I feel like this is a way to sweep the problem out, to ignore it, and we exempt all the areas that have influence and affluence. We move it to areas that, got 7,000 residents in Acton or whatever we have, and okay, well, they can all kick and scream, but it's only 7,000 people.
In Beverly Hills, it's a known policy that we don't encourage other people to go somewhere else by putting them on a bus or encourage that. That's not the way the system works, and it's a postage stamp of affluence, but at the same time, if you're gonna transition people, they at
Well, there's
least
the infrastructure.
deserve the ability to be successful at some point.
Well, maybe we can ask Connie to come in
I
July.
think we need to ask.
In July, well, I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard it, you know my position, I've already explained it.
Yeah. No, I think it's fair to ask her to come. The only reason why I'm stopping short on that is because I wanna make sure that it's a fruitful discussion where there'll be some feedback. We've already submitted the thing, and so we're just coming to tell you what we're
No,
gonna do.
she's at the very beginning of this.
Okay, so we have time. Well,
Yes,
then,
on this
How about
particular
the
issue.
first,
Well,
in August?
I would rather wait till August just because
Yeah.
I won't be here and I
Oh,
really
you
like.
know, I wanna hear this too,
Yeah.
and so.
And
So I can email her and ask her.
I'd also like
to-
to have time to get out word in the community too, that this is something that's being looked at for our area, so that we can get some feedback that way too. It's not just.
Okay.
Well, just the idea of parking a bunch of cars in our church parking lots.
It's concerning because I don't know if it's like, so, like Walmart and Sam's Club and Costco and stuff have kind of had for a while, I think they've stopped the process now, but had a long-standing thing, you could park an RV there if you're traveling through it.
If you were traveling.
Yeah,
Correct.
if somebody's on vacation or something.
Yes,
that's
no,
not-
but my point is that, my fear is that you've said now, once you do it in this, people are not gonna roll in the church parking lot and go, sorry, how many do you have covered for this permit? They're just gonna park, and then.
Well, that's my concern.
And then my concern goes further, because now we all know, based upon what we've heard, how hard it is to evict somebody, so now they've set up residents, they are there. Now what, now the church's tasked with trying to remove these people? I mean, or what if Church X is not signed up for that service? And people just go, well, it's a church, so I'm just gonna park there. I mean,
That's true, too.
it's such a huge can of worms to open up.
Yeah.
Have you guys noticed out in Lancaster, Ebony Line and beyond in the desert, how many travel trailers,
Are
mobile
just
home,
everywhere.
motorhomes,
Yes.
tents, and that's LA County, if I'm not mistaken, jurisdiction, not the city of Lancaster. So they're staying out there, and it's getting bad.
Little Rock, Lake LA,
I
yes.
saw
I mean,
it
but
on the
it's, Avenue I, it's just unbelievable amount of people out there.
I saw it on the way to Mammoth last weekend.
And
I was
many of
just
them-
like, what are they doing?
And then we heard, well, from the shelter partnership people, they were like, well, in LA, when the homeless count went up by 16%, here it was just 3%. She goes, but a lot of them probably didn't get counted. I said, I know for a fact they didn't get counted. Because the way they told the people here to count was, you go on county roads and you look. I said, half our roads are dirt. They didn't even, they're not supposed to go out on them. Half the roads out there off of Avenue I are dirt. Nobody went out there with them. So we probably got severely undercounted, and you're right, but they're throwing all kinds of ideas up to try to figure out a solution, which I appreciate. And, well,
So I have a
certainly that's what
question,
these
though.
maps indicate, and it's disturbing.
Is from my understanding, and Pam, you might know this too, if you're homeless and you're going to a shelter down in LA, you have to leave every day.
That's,
So you don't set up residency.
You can't set, yeah, so are they going to, these people gonna leave every day? Or
No, I
they
think
gonna
that's why
stay
the
there?
ordinance is gonna change what
No, okay,
create these
that's
new-
different. There's an ordinance about the camper, they stay
No,
there the whole
no,
time.
no, what I'm getting,
But the church parking lot, she said there would be a guard there, and they would just be for nighttime.
yeah, no, but I'm saying like even like the camping situation, right? So like, let's say, hey, that's what the ordinance is to carve out
That'd be
that
perfect.
thing of like, whatever the terms are for that, which would not be, you're leaving the campground every day or whatever. They might say, oh, it's 90 days or.
Oh, no, they just remove
Move,
it, you
yeah.
can move there,
Yeah,
live
which
there.
is crazy.
Well, but they're saying, well, it's temporary, I'm like, no, it's temporary for the person.
it won't
It is
be.
not
Yeah.
temporary for the place.
Well, and it may not,
Big difference.
well, it may not be, because at that point, some of these folks, especially here, okay, right, so there's not a job center, there's not this place where there's all this commerce going on where you're gonna say, hey, they're gonna be here, they're gonna find a job, and they're gonna come on, it's like, no, if if they're living in a tent there, I'm gonna guess transportation's probably not something that's reasonable. We don't have
That's right.
some mass transit that runs here regularly that's gonna get them to a job site. So you basically dead end them someplace and they're pushed out and forgotten. That's
Well,
what it
but
feels.
see, I'll be honest with you, we talked about that with Ruth, and she didn't realize just how dead end this place is, to
Yeah.
use your term.
No, yeah, I mean,
So
there's-
she literally said it's not really appropriate here. She made that
They
statement.
understood it after
But
we
she's
sat with them
shelter
for.
partnership,
Yeah.
she's not LA County.
Yeah, and
So
I'm not
we
one to be
need to-
NIMBY, I'm just saying, like, to me, if you're going to stick, I mean, you can say what you want, you know, on the like, there's jobs and there's, you know,
Hospitals,
Oasis, and there's all
bus,
sorts of stuff out there
there's
that.
buses.
Yes, there's all these different services and organizations that are there to provide services. There's not that here, we don't have that here, there's no.
They call it wraparound services, so you
Yeah,
have mental
yes,
health.
the whole shebang, but we don't have that here, and so that means they're either then having to transit to those locations, which I don't know what, there's not that infrastructure in place, so,
Well, see, but I think those are the things that Connie wants to hear.
Yeah.
To help shape.
well, then let's do that, let's,
A letter for
make a
August.
motion. No, we don't need to make that motion.
No.
We're gonna invite her, we'll invite her in August, whichever meeting works best for her.
Okay, I will send her an email tomorrow.
Okay.
And if she can't come, maybe Mr. Lamb can. He's the one who said it's countywide. And I said, is it really? Okay, so that's, now, the next thing at ARTC. SEA, they have agreed to write a letter to the county because the SEA ordinance, which is not final, it was heard by the board and went back to county council to have no utility scale renewable energy within the SEA boundary, which is important. So I would suggest we maybe write our own letter to that effect, and we also need to reiterate that they need to make sure home-based businesses are allowed in the SEA. They have to. And they haven't done that yet. I mean, we're sitting here fighting for home-based businesses in the SEA, I mean,
In the CSD.
in the CSD, and they're gonna be omitted from the SEA, and it's wrong, you know? All those people will have to stay below the radar, so on that issue, I think we should support what the ARTC is doing, but with that, on no utility scale renewable, but also, again, circle back on the home-based businesses.
We should start using the term, we don't want businesses in the shadows, they seem to like to wanna bring things in line, so hey,
Yeah.
no, we don't want.
Shine some light on that. So I don't know, does that need a motion? That's already a position we've taken, but
I don't,
write a follow-up letter.
I don't think we need a motion for that, I think we just,
Okay.
we're just repackaging what we've already said.
Okay, now the next thing this is a big deal on the mulch. So we had the mulch people here, right? And we learned that you have, that if you bring mulch to your property and it's not clean, you're tasked with the cleaning, okay? And you're supposed to get a report from the mulch hauler,
Provider.
whatever it is. And most mulch haulers didn't know that. Antelope Acres had a town council meeting a few weeks ago, several mulch makers were there, and now they know. Except for this, now there's a new state law that is being proposed that makes inspections of the receivers mandatory. And for testing the stuff you get, and if they find it's contaminated, then you are still fined. Even if you have your report that says it's clean, the mulch provider is off the hook. So they can you get mulch, it goes all through the record system, they can walk out and test your mulch. And if it's contaminated, you're in big trouble. With the DTS, the Department of Toxic Substance Control, I think is the group, or maybe it's all under Cal EPA. So I said, when this came out, I said, you know, if you do this, nobody's gonna wanna take mulch.
No.
Cause it's too risky. I mean, no matter, everything rolls down to you. And no matter how circumspect you are and careful,
Yeah, what
you're the
is
one
the
who's
homeowner
gonna get
stand out
tested.
there testing it as it comes off?
Yeah, and you're counting on this test report. And now all the mulch guys have to do is like gin up a test report and dump, like contaminated waste on your property.
No,
And
they
you're.
wash their hands of it, yeah.
So I suggested that they write a letter to Senator Wilk, Assemblyman Lackey, and Supervisor Barker saying, if you do this, nobody's gonna take your mulch. And you might think that doesn't matter, but the fact is that there are state and maybe even some federal laws that requires a certain level of diversion of green waste. And they've got to find, starting in the
place to
next few
stick it.
years, they need to find places to put this mulch. So nobody is gonna.
You're gonna cut off your.
Don't look
your
to me to
consumer
take it.
for
I'm gonna go up to Lowe's and buy their pine bark in bags, cause I'm pretty sure that's good stuff.
And they'll probably write a clause on there where they can come on your property.
That's exactly right.
Any time of the day and night.
Yes,
And
yes.
it don't matter what signage or gates I have on my property.
Yeah, it's a mandatory inspection process, so
Right.
I don't know the details, but, cause I only heard words, I didn't read anything, but it's terrible. And so I would like to write a letter to those people about
Absolutely
that.
terrible.
What?
It's absolutely terrible. They would be thinking of that.
There's so much stuff
Are
going
they
on.
telling you whether it's an insect pest like polyphemus shot hole?
Heavy metals, fecal coliform, any toxins.
In trees, right?
Well,
the
but
problem-
see, the mulch people mix it up
I'll
with trash.
switch to John, just so they can not pay,
Drywall too.
Dump
floors, we do.
Yeah, so it's not, there is one supplier named Lopez Canyon, and they make sure that their mulch is clean, there's very little trash. By state law, you can have like up to 1 or 2% of your mulch can actually be trash, like garbage, like plastic bag and paper and stuff. So you buy mulch sometimes, it's full of just, you go up to Antelope Acres, it's all over the place. And so you've seen it, but Lopez Canyon gives clean mulch, their stuff does not have stuff in it. I do a lot of permitting on, green waste treatments at a lot of these landfills, they have their own green waste areas, and they have AQD permits, and, but they didn't take stuff like pebbles and, whatever.
Well, some of the landfills too, I know back in the late nineties, they used the green waste and stuff to help cover up the odor.
Yes,
and stuff
that's
like-
in the
like
next
Bradley
10 years, that's gonna
landfill
be
in Sun
illegal.
Valley did that.
Yeah, it's called cover,
Right.
I think, it's not gonna be allowed after a certain amount of time, I don't remember what the years are. So that's when they have to divert it and find places, so like heavy metals, a lot of the, the railway ties has creosote, that green stuff is hex chrome, right? Or maybe it's copper. So there's heavy metals that can be in it, there's a lot of stuff.
Well, when you said that they could come on property and inspect the mulch, how would they know that you have it?
Because it's all going to be recorded.
It takes one wacky neighbor that doesn't.
I mean,
like
I don't
it.
actually know.
Anything you do
I didn't hear
for
the
them to show up on your
presentation,
property.
but that's what
Troy's
was
gonna be
conveyed, so.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, health department's been to my property 4 times in the last month.
Why?
That's another subject, sorry. You just asked me my
No.
personal.
Not what I'm concerned about.
But anybody
You're
can
talking
call
about
us.
inspecting everybody's property at will.
Didn't read the legislation, so, and I don't know the answer to that, but I do know, since now there's a whole new element to it, which is an inspection at the site where it's dumped. Mandatory, the inspector goes there, so when you receive the mulch, you're
Okay,
basically
so
saying, hey, I'm taking this, so you have a right to come on and inspect.
Well, and I was just saying, I'm sure there'll be some task force or something, and they'll.
Okay,
Because
no,
they'll say it's unhealthy, it's something like that, where they can show up and do whatever they want.
Or they might not even need to say anything at all, they just roll the
Exactly, I'm
badge.
at work doing whatever I want, and a neighbor calls and said, hey, somebody's over there doing, I get those all the time, I'm like, oh, okay. And that,
Well, and
I
then
can
you
see
show-
that coming, because they're gonna have that clause in there that says, yeah, we can come on your
Yeah.
property, we can.
And you
unlock
show
it."
your report, because when you get your mulch, we all know now to ask for a report, and if they don't give you a report, you don't let them drop it on your property.
Right.
But now, you have the report, and even if the report says clean, and it's dirty, you're still in trouble.
You'd be crazy to take mulch down.
That's
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, under this, it's not been
It's not,
adopted.
well,
I mean,
yeah.
It's
When it
not-
goes through, then, yeah.
That's my understanding is it hasn't been adopted yet, but I think we need to make sure that they understand nobody's gonna take this stuff. At least not willingly, maybe they'll force us to take it, I don't know.
I think this is another case of like some, myopic look at this, I think when people think of, the amount of mulch, whoever's reading, is they're thinking the Home Depot bag, like, well, it's gonna be a little bag. They're not thinking of somebody getting a literal truckload, where it's not like the cleanup is, I scoop it all in a wheelbarrow and I wheel it in the yard.
Oh, no, they know it's these big truck guys.
that's
No, they know for sure.
ridiculous.
They don't care about the little Lowe's bags. I don't think they're worried about those, so, no. Anyway, so I don't know what to do about that, or maybe, and I don't know
This
how
would-
far along that ordinance is, I don't know what the status of it is, but maybe just an email, cause I'm sort of getting logged down on letters I have to write, but something, I don't know.
I'm just wondering if this might affect people who have a large number of animals and produce manure and things every day and other stuff and make their own mulch and then share it with neighbors or friends or whatever.
What you just said, I'm not even listening to. Because I have no doubt that would be not, from what the presentation we heard, that's not even allowed.
That's not what.
That would not even be allowed, because then you're giving away, you're not a licensed
Yeah, you're
mulch
not
maker,
testing.
composter, whatever the word is.
It's called sharing with neighbors.
I'm just gonna pretend I
All
didn't
right,
do any of
well,
that.
I just wanna warn people that, you
Yeah.
know.
Don't do that.
exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
No
well, okay,
sharing.
so I think the presentations that they gave on composting and mulch, when we had them here a few months ago, are on our website. So I
Yeah, they are.
encourage those people to read them, because my takeaway from that was only get
From-
compost and mulch from a licensed doodad,
And even then.
and get the paper from him. So,
Well, I remember that meeting, cause I had brought it up to the guy here, that the county or something was offering to transfer.
Oh, yeah, the signs,
facility,
you talked
and
about
so
the-
they still couldn't guarantee from their own, and I'm like, no way, I would never.
he didn't believe the stuff you were telling him. It's like, no, that's not right. It's
Yeah.
like,
There's a billboard,
Yeah,
there
yeah.
was, on the freeway, it's like, there are signs on buses driving around AV that says, we
Yeah.
deliver mulch for free, and.
Yeah.
You know,
that's because they have the diversion requirements have already kicked in.
yeah.
But they keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So, I don't know. So I just see, at least we have a little bit of leverage here. If they know that nobody's gonna take their stupid mulch if they do this law, maybe they won't do the law.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's all we have.
Yeah.
So, maybe, anything, a letter, I don't know, do we need a letter on that? Vote on that, I mean, a vote.
It's okay with me.
Yeah.
I have a consensus.
Yeah.
Cause we had them here about mulch, this is just
Yeah.
an additional
Yeah.
thing on it, so, okay, so then a letter on mulch.
Letter or email?
You know what, I think though it should be a letter, cause we're going to Wilk, and I know I said email,
Latin and
but now
what?
I'm reversing myself, because I realized it's gonna
Good thing
be
it's not a motion.
flipping me up, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
And mulch to Wilk, Barber, and Clacking. And let's see, I think that's it from the ATC, I hope that's it, yes, that's it.
Okay. Publicity. Very famous. Finance, ways and means, Pam?
No, have nothing.
Community standards and decorum.
I think we're good with that for another 8 months.
Alright. Trails and open space and recreation. Jackie.
Oh, I don't have anything.
Okay. Utilities. Utilities.
Oh, no, we don't have.
Okay. Bylaws.
8 months or so.
Yeah, emergency response.
Yeah.
No, you know, had a chance to talk to, we're gonna reach out to somebody.
Mike Fox?
Yes.
Who were you gonna talk to? I didn't hear that.
Really, Mike Fox has some ideas on that.
On what? I'm sorry.
On,
Disaster planning.
Oh, okay.
okay.
Beautification, legal dumping, nothing, not for note. Film coalition, anything, I should change to the film to Jackie.
There's some more email
Yes.
trails. There's a filming going on tonight from like 7 to 3 a.m. every night this week. And, I just asked, can you confirm that there won't be a lot of, cause there's supposed to be smoke effects and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Won't be a lot of loud noises, cause people are trying to sleep at 3 a.m. And, you know, blinding bright lights, and we got a snarky response back from film, so we got nothing really.
And got a response back from Film LA?
No, well,
From
from Mr. Smith.
Oh,
We did get a
that's
response
not-
back from Film LA more than 24 hours later. We got the notice at, say, 8 o'clock on Saturday morning, so
yeah.
I sent out a clarification, please confirm this, right? It was a reasonable request. oh my gosh, they jumped all over. I'm like, it's filming till 3 AM on a holiday weekend when people are trying to sleep. Don't give me grief for asking 2 simple questions to protect our community. Lights and noise, that's all I wanna know.
Yeah, well, and then,
And
they
then the
didn't need to
response-
start on the answer, they could have
No.
just responded with just what is
Well, I
happening.
got a response eventually from the Film LA
And they were
person.
actually nicer.
She was nice, she said, she was curt, but
No,
she
but
said.
she was not as
the-
snarky
No,
as-
yeah, no, she wasn't snarky. She said the filming complies with the conditions that have been attached to the permit. And then I emailed back and I said, well, that doesn't answer the question, and has that permit already been approved? How could it have been approved?
Yeah.
You know, it was issued on Saturday morning and it's already approved on Monday morning. Oscar doesn't even work.
Yeah.
He was, Oscar's
Yeah.
regional planning. He's the one who I wanted to get the confirmation from on it, per their meeting here, a month or 2 ago.
Well, and they're always so adamant about who approves the permit.
Oh, I know,
The
it's
film
like-
doesn't issue the permit, yeah, it's like, well, okay.
So don't tell me Oscar has already approved this, cause he's never seen it.
Yeah, didn't never know.
Regional planning, so they were just, it's deteriorating rapidly, the whole situation.
Frustrating.
And we haven't gotten our meeting date set.
No, what do you want, that's another thing, what do you want me to tell Chris? I need to know that, cause I got an email.
I think that you should be there because this is
Yeah.
CUP related and you are the expert on that.
Well, and you've been the one really dealing with it all, so I think you should be there. So
Okay, so we'll just
we
push it to
just-
August then?
Push it to
To
August.
August, okay.
Absolutely,
Yeah, that will be an email,
yeah.
and that's all I have.
Okay. Industrial aesthetics, we don't have anybody assigned to that, but I don't think there's anything.
No.
We still have Ruth. She said
Yeah,
she would
she said she
contact
would
us
take care of
when,
it.
if there was something to tell, she would let us know.
Let me, make a note to her back. All right, traffic safety, safe routes to schools.
Talked about this.
Okay. High-speed rail, anything?
No, I don't have anything tonight.
All right. All right, unfinished business. Gonna contact Connie Chung.
What do we wanna do
need to
about
make
it?
our meeting with, Captain.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't done that.
Captain who?
Captain of Montana.
America.
Oh, we can use Captain
Schaefer,
America right about
is that
now.
right?
Yep.
What about, were we gonna talk about appointing the other seat?
This, so, all right, so Captain Humor, I'll reach out and get some dates and figure out something, but I'm gonna guess it's probably gonna be August-ish, just based upon.
Yeah.
I'm
So you'll be
gonna
able to-
be able to do that, cause I know I'm gone 2 days, July, so.
When you call the station, just ask for the level.
Yeah, I would say, I think,
Yeah.
we got, I think at some point there was some email or something that I got, or I think when he was here.
I can also send you guys information.
We've also been jammed on a lot of other stuff.
She's
Yeah, we've been pretty
his
good.
keeper,
Yeah.
so she has a
Well,
schedule.
and I'll be honest, him showing up a couple times to meetings actually helped, I think, mitigate some of the non-communication we felt, and obviously, your
Yeah.
presence, I think, has been very much appreciated, not only here, but I think throughout the community. You've done a really good job being visible and being reactive to things, and proactive, so appreciate that.
We're definitely hearing good comments that you're out in the community. At least I've heard.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
3 or 4.
Positive.
Yep, and we know that Captain Schaefer wants to be with us, we've
Yeah.
just been jammed on it.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, I'll.
He's like I said, he's an Acton resident, I've heard chew out people for not being in their area, so. That's his thing, he's trying to get everyone. to-
Not you didn't get you.
No.
And he did a really good job hiding the fact that he's an Acton resident.
Yeah.
I was like, what? You
Well,
live here?
it's not easy to become captain, so I have a feeling that you haven't seen him because he's probably been at work last one.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I think that was, if there's anything to relay to him, really appreciated him being here,
Yes.
initially and making some contact, that was really good. Okay, yeah, and then we did receive a, application for an appointment for a council seat.
Oh.
Mr. Iver. So you guys, would you like to?
I was unaware that we actually had a form.
Yeah, I didn't know that, yeah.
Well,
Yay.
it's the application.
How organized are you, Jerry?
Hey, you know.
You got it going on.
I don't know. So, Mr. Piper, as, we've talked and he's applied to Mr. Troy, Mr. Piper back here, about joining the council and filling one of the vacancies.
You know what you're talking about, we have here don't.
Yeah, well, you know, so we're just passing it around because we just got.
We only really have one vacancy.
Yes.
And so
Right.
we're excited as all get
Well,
out.
I mean, I like to say that, Mr. Bieber's been very active, he's helped us with the CSDs, he's given a lot of, fair amount of time to, and good comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coming to our meetings.
Coming to the meetings.
Attending
So,
the meetings, showing
attending the
interest.
meetings. Maybe the original circumstance that brought him here, it seems to have been, maybe not completely, but subdued, and a lot of clarity's come out of the time in between. So, so I'm more than open to receiving an appointment. I don't know.
And,
Good with that?
yeah, and I think.
Recognizing it's only for a few months.
That's what I was gonna
Right.
clarify and say that it's just for a few months and.
I think I explained that to you, right?
No,
That when you get appointed, you run in the following election.
which will
Maybe you
be,
did, and I.
Yes,
I-
so you'll get, if you get appointed right now, you will run in November.
November.
And we have 4 open seats?
No. Oh, we will have 4 seats.
4
That-
seats.
that 4 people, four of our
in
seats
November.
are running in November.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, so, it's a tryout thing, so if you like, hey, you can try it out, see if you like being on this side of the table and kinda go from there, so.
You mentioned Jean Chakanaka also.
We got an email,
I don't understand.
a week ago, or not less than.
No, it was like a couple
3
days
days
ago,
ago?
3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah, Ms.
She was interested.
Chakanaka Fuller, who said she's, wants to be on the town council, is interested in an appointment. And, so I emailed her and I said, can you please come to the meeting tonight and,
So we can meet you
introduce
and-
yourself and, talk to us. But she's not here, so I don't know beyond that, so.
Okay, she was fairly well known some years ago, oh God, I have to go back and.
7 years?
20 years
7.
ago.
20 years ago? Has it been that long?
Yes.
7 years ago
She
was
didn't say 7.
2012.
She didn't say 7.
Jean, I know Jean.
Yeah, she didn't say 7, no, Jackie.
Oh, okay.
She just said several years.
I think she even had indicated that she was on the council.
Which in my 30 years of being here, I don't remember her being on the
I
council.
can go back and check that, but,
I don't know when that would have been.
it would have been in the early days, it was a long time ago, but.
So it hasn't been.
I know it hasn't been since 2005, that I know.
And it hasn't been since I've been here, which is 89. But she was a realtor at one point, so that's how I know her.
Well, I think I told her that, we're fast approaching that, we can't appoint anybody after the beginning of August, because we're in the election cycle. So that's why I was hoping she could come tonight, because, this is unusual, we have 2 people interested in one position, that never happens, so, but I think I told her that the election